back, just standing there.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and we are live at somethingtowrestle.com, and what a special day it's going to be. We're one day removed from a big wrestling pay-per-view. WrestleMania is in our sights, and tonight is the basketball championship. This is like the best time of the year for a lot of different reasons, is it not, John?
Absolutely. Like February just sucks. There's nothing but like college basketball and meaningless NBA basketball, until they get to the playoffs. Then nobody cares until you have March Madness, and then you got Kentucky Derby coming up. Then you got WrestleMania coming up. Then you got all kinds of things going on. Now things are good.
Well, I'm excited about this championship game. Of course, the Final Four was this past weekend, all in Dave Silva's hometown of San Antonio. I got to ask, what do you expect tonight? We got Florida and we got Houston. What say you, John?
Those Gator boys ain't never seen a defense like Houston. Those boys are going to shut them down. Houston is leading the nation in defense efficiency and three-point shooting. I think the game is Houston's. I think the crowd's going to be obviously very pro Houston. I think Houston wins the national championship finally.
Well, so now that we know what John is doing with this particular game tonight, I want to mention that he's got 5 best bets that he does over with Briscoe and Bradshaw. That's Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw. You can catch it anywhere you enjoy podcasts. I'm talking YouTube, Spotify, anywhere else. You've had a lot of fun with 5 best bets. You've been on a tear with baseball too, right?
Been on a tear, had a down day or two, but I've been on a tear overall. But it's probably unsustainable, but who cares? It's good. It's good when you're on the unsustainable side when you're winning. Because you're always saying, regression will come eventually. But it's good to say that when you're winning. Because when you're losing, it's like, I think regression will come. But you don't know for sure.
We're having a lot of fun here. We are live with JBL.
We live!
Question for him. Keep them coming. Our topic today is going to be the Big Show. But before we talk about the Big Show, we should be talking about the actual Big Show that's coming up. I can't believe this is real. But next weekend, WrestleMania, or within striking distance now. There's 2 Raws and 2 Smackdowns left to go. What are you thinking of the build so far for this year's WrestleMania, John?
I think it's been great. Everybody was bashing the creative and Triple H and all the things about there wasn't a great build up to WrestleMania. Well, as we've talked about before, the show was much later in the years. So right. you can't have a build up, like when you have a late January pay-per-view, and then you have WrestleMania in March. It's pretty easy. You have one pay-per-view in between. You start the build-up at Royal Rumble and the road to WrestleMania, as we've always said. But this road to WrestleMania was several weeks longer. So they really waited to the last pay-per-view to start the build. And I think they've done a fantastic job building up to it. It's a shame to see about Kevin Owens that he's hurt. What a terrific competitor and what a terrific guy for so long in the business. Obviously, the hope is that he'll be back, but it's a shame to see him out.
We got to talk about some controversy as we get closer to WrestleMania. There's been a lot of discussion about a promo segment this past Friday night on Smackdown. I know you and I weren't there, but we're getting a lot of different reports about what happened with Charlotte Flair and Tiffany Stratton. What do you make of what you saw this past Friday night, John?
I thought it drew interest. And I don't know how much interest there was going to be for this. There was going to be a lot of interest. This is for a championship, and there's a lot to this. But I thought this created interest. And people were saying, well, there was a shoot. And I love the people out there, and there are hypocrites out there that will say, we need to look more like a shoot. And then when they don't know if it is a shoot or not, they go, someone should be fired over this. So you can't have it both ways. You either want it entertaining, you want it personal, you want it where you can't see through it. And again, this may be 100% shoot. I have no idea if it is or not. It looks like it probably is. So what? It's something that created interest. People are going to be very interested in this match now.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, there's a lot of chatter about it. I'm probably too close to the situation myself.
You think?
We want to know what you guys are thinking about this WrestleMania build. And I guess we've got to at least cover, the big news to me is not that Randy Orton finds himself without a WrestleMania opponent. We'll table that conversation for a minute. But what the heck is going on with Kevin Owens and what's next? Sometimes I think we see things happen on TV and we wonder, is that a story? I get the vibe this is not a story. And he's got to go have major surgery. Anytime you hear something like that about a neck or a back or anything with the spine, man, my radar goes up. What do you think of this announcement from Kevin Owens, and what do you hope is next?
What I hope is, I'd love for it to be a work, obviously, but it certainly doesn't look like it is, and it's terrible. You know, anybody who has this, especially right in the peak of their career, which Kevin Owens is, you absolutely hate it for them. You know, your guys are going to have this eventually. You know, very few guys go through without having major surgeries. And so you're going to have this somewhere probably in your career. It's just the nature of the business and the fact that wrestlers wrestle a long time. And because of that, I don't think we're jaded to it, but it's something that, you know, you've seen so many times. And it's just as tragic every time as you see it, especially for a young guy like Kevin. I say young, you know, compared to me, he's young, but he still has so many years left in the business. And right when he's on top of his game, I mean, he has done fantastic. It's hard to believe he's been injury-free this long. You look at the stuff that he's done from the independents to the WWE. I mean, he just has rubber bones. You know, we always said that about Rob Van Dam. You know, he must have rubber bones, that he's not getting hurt doing all this insane stuff. And, you know, unfortunately now it is either caught up to him or, you know, something happened wrong or whatever happened. And now he's got to take a bunch of time off, and hopefully his surgery goes very well.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers to Kevin Owens. I mean, one of the all-time greats, one of the more unsung heroes of WWE for the past several years. And I have my fingers crossed that he gets to make a speedy recovery and we see him sooner rather than later. I do want to ask your opinion, you know, as a performer. I guess there's a report out that Kevin Owens was pretty upset that this news of him having to step away for a surgery was leaked ahead of time. He's shared through a statement, I believe, that he wanted to be the person to share this news and information with the world. He didn't want them to read about it. He wanted to be able to have the opportunity to let the fans hear it directly from him. Of course, the reporting didn't allow that, and the news leaked. What do you make of that? That he wanted to be the one to share that news? Does he have a bitch, I guess is the phrase? Does he have a gripe?
I think he has. Yes, absolutely. 100%. I completely agree that he has a bitch with this, because there's some stooge that put it out.
Yeah.
You know, we never find the stooges. You say, people always say, oh, that stooge needs to be beat up. That stooge needs to be fired. I completely agree with that sentiment. I remember back in 96 when I first got into WWE. I got in WWE in 95, but the first time I was with all the boys, Bret Hart told everybody, if we find a stooge, we're going to beat your ass. They never found it then. We never found it since. We've always had guys come along. We find that stooge, we're going to beat your ass, which don't blame them. And I don't doubt that they would, and they should. And I love it if they did, if they had. You know, Vampiro famously punched the stooge down in Mexico somewhere, which I'm very proud of, because it got me a job down there to be a Vampiro Americano. But most of the time, the stooges never get found out, and they suck. What a piece of shit that a stooge is that would release stuff like this, that it should have gone to Kevin to be able to do. But this stooge, whoever it was, they probably got a few likes on social media from or whatever they got. They're not getting any monetary thing out of it. They're just stooges. And that's about the lowest form of life.
I agree. It's just terrible when people stooge off big surprises. Hey, in other news, I want your feedback on this new Rusev signing that WWE's not announced, but everyone's reporting. Of course, I can't help but make that funny tongue-in-cheek transition. There's a lot of reporting out that Rusev has been re-signed. We don't know that. You and I don't have it. Well, I don't have any inside knowledge. I don't know. But that's the report that we're seeing online. But we're also reading that the former Lana, who was a big part of that act, is not going to be joining him. I, for one, absolutely loved that Rocky IV presentation of Ivan Drago, and I just thought that was great. And I'll never forget, and people get tired of me and make fun of me in the comments, but what a visual to wrestle John Cena at WrestleMania, and you make your entrance on a freaking tank. Like an all-time great WrestleMania entrance. I really wanted the duo back together. We are in that sort of, hey, the Monday night before WrestleMania, or the Monday after WrestleMania, we're going to see some returns. We're going to see some debuts. Do you think that's what we'll see with Rusev? Or is Nick Aldis going to announce that Randy Orton's WrestleMania opponent is Rusev or something like that?
I hope so. Absolutely. I love Rusev. And I mean, absolutely love him. The Bulgarian brute. I mean, he is such a fun human being in on camera and behind camera. You know, he's a really smart guy. Had this great, amateur background in Bulgaria. He's just a good dude. and he went to AEW and he went like the witness protection program. I don't know what the hell. You've got this guy, you can't figure out what to do with him. It just blows my mind that they didn't. I don't know what happened. Maybe there was a personality conflict. Maybe there was a problem. I have no idea what happened, but he belongs on television.
Yes.
And he is an incredible talent. He will do great things in the WWE. And I really believe that WWE will want to send a message. By the way, come to our company and we'll find a way to use you and make you a real superstar. I think they're going to use this as something to send a message. And I hope they do, because I love Rusev. I really do. I smile when I see him. I go up and hug him, and I think he's the greatest guy. And I'm so happy that he's back. I guess he's back. I guess WWE hadn't officially announced. I hope that's what Nick Aldis says. They need somebody for Randy Orton. Randy's got to be at WrestleMania. There's no doubt about it. And I hope it's Rusev.
There's been a lot of fun speculation, but that's one I could get really excited about. I'm looking forward to seeing him back if those rumors are true. I would like to see him with Lana. I know that there's an evolution of characters and things like that, but at some point, man, we got to have them back on screen together in that presentation. I do want to ask you.
I thought they were a great duo together. I thought Lana was fantastic. I thought Lana did a wonderful job, and Rusev. Like I've already talked about how much I like Rusev. I think they're fantastic together, and it just seems like I don't know about the odd couple. Obviously Lana's very pretty and Rusev is not. So he's a brute. He's a Bulgarian brute. I say that with a lot of love, but I think they'd be great to be back together. Hopefully they do.
I got to ask a little bit about the other debut that we just saw this past Friday on SmackDown. It should have been what everyone was talking about. Of course, the Charlotte promo with Tiffany Stratton made sure that no one talked about it. But Rey Fenix is in WWE. We've seen him in TNA before. We've seen him in Lucha Underground before. We've seen him in Mexico before. And most recently, of course, we've seen him in AEW as one half of the Lucha Bros. We saw Penta make his debut in January on Netflix. We saw SmackDown and Rey Fenix this past Friday. What do you think of the Phoenix debut? And what do you think Phoenix's WWE tenure is going to look like? And maybe lastly, were you surprised that he kept the name Ray? I know this once upon a time was a Vince McMahon no-no. Shane Helms sort of poked fun at that online saying, wait, we've already got another Ray. What's up with that? What do you make of this?
I think it's great. I think what's happening, it looks like, is they're building their own Lucha division. I think they're going to have which I hope it's not a separate Lucha division. I hope it's an integration, and I hope they have their own Lucha shows. I was just down in Mexico for AAA, and I was talking to the promoter that promoted South Texas, and they had just done a show in Brownsville, I think it was, and they're a little worried because of President Trump being in office now. Were they going to still get a lot of the migrants that were coming to wrestling shows? And whatever their capacity was, at 2,000 or 3,000, 4,000, whatever it was, for a spot show, independent show, they sold out just like they had hoped to. And that had no effect on it. But it tells you there is a massive population that wants Lucha and wants the Latino theme in wrestling. I think it's much bigger than what people have estimated. When you go down to South Texas, especially when you get past San Antonio, it feels like it's 100% Latino. And I think they've been underestimated about the percentage and their buying power, and they've not been catered to, and I think it's terrific. And I've talked to Ray about this. I've talked to WWE about this. They need to find a way to. WWE is supposed to be a variety show, and it is. And I think that's what they're creating for a massive part of our population that's part of us, that comes from a different heritage, just like a lot of us do, and want to see something more close to their heritage. And I think it's great.
Well, something else you and I both think is great is Stopbox. If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? You got to go check these guys out at stopboxusa.com/wrestle. And here's the reality. If you own a handgun for self-defense, your storage likely fits into one of two different frustrating categories. It's either locked away, meaning it's safe, but out of reach in case of an emergency, or it's unsecured, leaving it vulnerable to anyone. But Stopbox USA saw this problem and designed a groundbreaking solution. It's called the Stopbox Pro, And with the Stopbox Pro, you'll never have to choose between security and readiness ever again. Its ingenious push-button locking system gives you fast, reliable access when every second matters, without the hassle of keys or reliance on batteries. It's 100% mechanical, so it works every time. No power needed. With Stopbox USA, you can finally have both security and readiness. The Stopbox Pro's mechanical keyless system allows for fast, secure access without the risk of fumbling for keys when every second counts. It's also battery-free, so you never have to worry about your lock not working. And right now, our listeners can get 10% off your entire order when you use the code WRESTLE. They're also giving you a buy one, get one free offer on their Stopbox Pro. That's 10% off and a free Stopbox Pro when you go right now and use the code WRESTLE at StopboxUSA.com. That's promo code WRESTLE at StopboxUSA.com. I want to remind you, all the Stopbox products, they're made right here in the USA in their own facility. So not only does this ensure the highest quality craftsmanship of every product that they send out, it also means creating meaningful jobs and opportunities for the American worker. I also want to mention that you can actually travel, that's right, airline travel, with your TSA compliant Stopbox Pro. That's right. The Stopbox Pro is TSA compliant. So you just check it in your bag and you're good to go. So right now, once again, for a limited time, our listeners can get this crazy deal. Not only do you get 10% off your entire order when you use the code WRESTLE at StopboxUSA.com, they hook you up with that buy one, get one free on their Stopbox Pro. So it's 10% off and a free Stopbox Pro when you use our code WRESTLE at StopboxUSA.com. Discover a better way to balance security and readiness with Stopbox. So listen, man, we're going to be talking about the Big Show here, but I do want to ask you about the big controversy. You know, we mentioned at the top of the show that there was a controversial promo battle, if you will, on Smackdown. But what's been happening lately is a lot of chatter offline, and it's not on camera, but it is something that people are talking about and recording and posting. I'm talking about the back and forth with Swerve Strickland and Booker T. I don't know that you've ever even met Swerve Strickland, but I know you've been longtime great friends with Booker T. And I guess these guys have been friendly with each other and spoken well of each other. And I guess Swerve Strickland went on a hip-hop YouTube channel known as DJ Vlad. Shout out to that channel because they have created a lot of controversy throughout the years. And now there's one in wrestling. I guess Swerve was holding Booker T accountable for the maybe infamous moment when Vince McMahon dropped the N-word. Booker T felt like he didn't have to defend himself. His resume speaks for itself, and he reminded everyone that racism didn't just stop in 1990. He had to deal with it in all walks of life, as well as wrestling. You and I are two white dudes, probably unqualified to chime in.
You better believe it.
But I do think it's interesting that you see a veteran and a guy in the game now, when they work in different companies, sort of going back and forth. As you and I are talking on a Monday afternoon, just last night when the camera stopped rolling, Swerve Strickland, after the main event of AEW, said, F Booker T, I got to hear, what'd you think of all this back and forth, and what do you think's next here?
There are a lot of things in this, a lot of things to go through. And as you've said many times, Conrad, your opinion can't be wrong.
Yes.
And, you know, Swerve Strickland, I'm not going to get in any type of argument or fight with Swerve Strickland. Whatever his opinion was, that's his opinion.
That's right.
And that can't be wrong. And so I'm not going to take whatever he said. If, you know, he believes it, that's his opinion. And I have no issue with that. Now, I don't agree with it. Booker T, you know, is one of my dear friends. I love Booker, and I saw Booker go through so much racist bullshit, you know, in Texas. They'd come out there in his Texas. They drew money in the sportatorium, he and his brother, Stevie Ray. That was unbelievable. It was, you know, Iceman King Parsons did as well there. You know, but he had to deal with all kinds of racist shit over that. I've always considered Booker T as a pioneer, like same as I consider Ron. Same as I consider Ernie Ladd or Big Daddy Sika or so many guys, Tony Atlas, Rocky Johnson, Teddy Long. I mean, so many guys that have come along and have, you know, are real pillars in this business. And I consider Booker T in that. You know, he paved the way. And as Ron would always say, he didn't just pave the way for, you know, young black wrestlers. He paved the way for all wrestlers, because once you break down barriers And Booker T broke down barriers. And when you break down a barrier, it's not because you're equal to what's on the other side. You break down that barrier because you're better than what's on the other side. That's why they choose you to break that barrier. The same thing with Jackie Robinson. They didn't choose Josh Gibson. They didn't choose Satchel, who was just as good or had a better resume. They chose Jackie, because of who Jackie was. Now, Satchel came along later. Unfortunately, Josh, had the heart attack and didn't, or brain tumor, whatever he had, and passed away. But guys like Booker are guys that break barriers because of who they are. And that's a remarkable thing. And that barrier that's broken opens things up for so many people. Now, all of a sudden, you look at it and go, okay, maybe we were wrong about black wrestlers. Maybe if we were wrong about black wrestlers, maybe we're wrong about women wrestlers or Indian wrestlers or Mexican wrestlers or anybody else. Once barriers start breaking, they start tumbling like dominoes. But somebody's got to be there to do it. And Booker and Ron are two of those guys. And I mentioned there's so many other guys that, before them that did it. But I always thought Booker was a guy that, certainly never had to defend himself. And so I disagree with Swerve. Respectfully, I disagree with him because I think he's a very talented guy. And whatever he said is his opinion. Your opinions can't be wrong because it's your opinion. But I love Booker, and it's a movie. It's either a movie or it isn't. When Vince says something like that, I mean, you have so many different movies. Hannibal Lecter chopped people up and ate them in a movie. It's either a work or it isn't. And that's not the time to my opinion. I think Booker's right about what he said. Now, that being said, it's created a lot of buzz. And so I don't know, I assume it's all, these guys have kind of got cross, but it's created buzz for both. And I think some of that is kind of cool, for these guys. If you're going to pick on somebody, Booker's about as big a name as you can get, and so part of that, I've always thought, Tracy Smothers did some stuff about me, but, back in the day. He got his independence. He had this big belly, and he put a suit, and he talked like Foghorn Leghorn. He was imitating me, and I thought I ought to send him some money because all he's doing is promoting me, And so these guys are creating some buzz out there. I'm not sure that's bad. I used to kind of hate it, but now because of social media, they're the ones in the news. WrestleMania is coming up next week, and so no matter what you think, I mean, these two guys are in the forefront of what everybody is talking about. I saw RJ City say something about Taker a few months ago. When I saw it made me mad, because I love Taker, and I think he's wrong. But again, that's his opinion. But if you're going to do something, I mean, Taker's the guy, and so I didn't know what all RJ City did, so I looked him up. I realized that he's out there with Renee, and who I think is just fantastic. And it made me interested in what he did. Yes. And so some of this, I think, can go to your benefit. But you've got to also be careful because Booker T is a very beloved guy, and it can backfire on you. And if people start taking Booker T's side, it can really backfire on you. And it depends on what you want. There's a fine line there. Same with RJ City and Undertaker. It can backfire on you. You see some guys out there that they want to get in a fight every week with somebody. Some of these internet writers and things like that, or not internet writers, but the guys who are doing videos. And they want to create some buzz just by, let's get in a fight with Ric Flair. Let's get in a fight with Arn Anderson. Let's get in a fight with, Undertaker or somebody else. And after a while, it just becomes white noise, and you become, kind of blasé. People don't listen to you anymore. I think you got to be careful on that, but it does create some buzz. So a million things there, Conrad. And I hope I answered some of them, at least my opinion, which again, my opinion can't be wrong.
Yeah. And I, again, we said it at the top before I even threw it to you. I don't have an opinion on all the, what's good or bad for black wrestlers. I'll leave that conversation with Booker T and Swerve.
Me too.
I do think that it's a valid conversation. I do wonder if there was a different way to handle it or have that conversation. And I'm wondering, if in hindsight, Swerve went a little too hard in the paint on DJ Vlad with regard to Booker T. If he really felt that way, maybe they had that conversation offline. I don't know the nature of their real life relationship, but to your point, everybody's talking about this, but the unfortunate thing is I don't think there's going to be a payoff. Like, I don't imagine all of a sudden Booker T shows up in AEW and there's a match and we know that Swerve Strickland just re-signed. So this is just going to be some back and forth, and it allows guys like us to talk about it, but then it just goes away because there is no payoff, right?
Right. There isn't, and unless the payoff is to get your name bigger to do something else. And I don't know if these guys, are thinking that. It's tough to go, when you're talking on a talk show, and I've been in Swerve's place many, many times, and he may have said exactly what he wanted. So I'm certainly not speaking for him. I cannot read his mind, and I'm not trying to. But I've gone where I had a point. I wanted to emphasize a little more. And sometimes when you're bantering with your boys, you say things you wouldn't say on air. But sometimes you get to there because you get all worked up. And I don't know if that's part of it or not. That's the problem with doing so many of these shows. End up saying something, and people will take that little bit out of context and say, oh, this is what this person said. It is what you said, but it wasn't the context of what you meant. And so these things happen. Shit happens. I don't think it's a big deal. I hope Swerve and Booker end up meeting up and shaking hands and becoming friends again, which I feel like they will. I don't, I know Booker very well. I don't know Swerve. I'd like to. He's very talented, but I hope that's what I hope happens.
Well, I hope that someday, somehow, we do get to see a payoff, whatever that looks like.
That would be awesome. If they're working some payoff, Swerve goes down to his Ring of Honor down there in Houston. Booker does a wonderful job down there. Booker's done so much for so many people.
Reality of Wrestling is the name of it.
Reality of Wrestling, ROW, not ROH. ROW. Yeah, getting my initials and acronyms all wrong. But yeah, it'd be great to see Swerve down there to do something with Booker. That'd be a lot of fun. You got two incredible athletes, and Booker still is. I remember when he was in the Royal Rumble in San Antonio, they wanted me to be in it, and I said, I can't get the Royal Rumble, and they said, oh, Booker's in it. I said, yeah, he's in shape, and he looks good. I'm not. Then I found out at Royal Rumble that the Brock Lesnar was coming out right after I walked Baron Corbin out and came back. And I literally told Brock, I said, Brock, you do not walk out of this dressing room till I'm back. I said, because you'll break me.
We're getting some interesting feedback in the chat. We threw up a poll here, and 50% of the fans who are watching right now think Swerve should lay off Booker T. 25% don't understand the context, and 25% think he has a point. And then there's some folks who I guess hate listening to the show. Shout out to Rob, who said, of course, John and Connie side with a fellow friend. I didn't think we sided with anybody right there.
Right.
It is what it is. He also says that every time you have an opinion, I slurp it, and that here I am glazing Ashley. Yes, Charlotte Flair is my sister-in-law. I'm sorry if I have an opinion about that and care for that person. But I'm sure if you had a podcast, you can hear and shit on your whole family. So
it makes for a very weird Thanksgiving dinner when you're like, oh yeah, she's completely wrong. I don't know what the hell's wrong with her. She's
the shits.
She's horrible. I don't know what she's thinking.
And I can't believe you, John, actually, might have something favorable to say about someone you've worked with for 30 years. How dare you? Like,
that's right. Somebody I broke in with, somebody I love like Booker T and Undertaker. I can't believe I had something favorable to say about him.
I got to have a conversation with you about Paul Wight. He's our topic today, and I'm really excited to talk about his journey with the WWF because, he comes over at a pretty interesting time. When he makes the jump, it's early 1999. We first see him at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in Memphis. That's where they had the famous cage match between Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And up through the ring, here comes what we would now know as the Big Show. Were you watching or had you seen any of his work as the Giant in WCW at all?
Just parts of it. When he came out, he made such a big splash. I thought they shouldn't have debuted him as Andre's son. Not out of disrespect to Andre. Those things happen. I just thought it pigeonholed him too much, and I thought they should have brought him in as somebody else. But they brought him in, and he's had a Hall of Fame career since. So obviously, it worked, or either he got over it. But yeah, I saw some of his work down there, and just what a massive man this guy is. He's a true giant. You've met him. He is a true giant. Thank God he's a friendly giant.
I do want to ask you, in his in-ring debut, they put him with Steve Austin, and he loses clean to Steve Austin on Monday Night Raw. And listen, I know that creative is subjective. If I've learned one thing from listening to Jeff Jarrett talk on his podcast, My World, is that creative truly is subjective. You may like something I don't like. We can't really, there's no way to be objective about that. However, you know, the way, if we really felt like, hey, this is the new giant in WWE, we know how Vince beloved Andre the Giant. He would have never made such a major investment and then turned around and beat him. And I say major investment because I do want to talk about his contract, but were you surprised that his first match he lost?
We all just laughed. That was so Vince. That was so Vince. It's like, hey, I'm in charge here. You'll find out right now. That's to me, that's what that was. I thought it was a terrible decision. Why would you beat the Giant? You bring him in his first match, you beat him. I understand. You've got the biggest draw probably in the history of wrestling across from him, Stone Cold. And he's our guy. Stone Cold's our guy. But why would you put him out there with Stone Cold if you're just going to beat him? And there's a million things you could have done. We laughed backstage like, well, Vince just made a point. And I think that's what Vince did. You know, Vince, when guys came in, he would do something to show that, you know what, I run this place and there's not going to be an issue. And I think that's what that was. I thought that's what it was then. I thought that's what it was now.
Is that really the best way? I mean, listen, I know that sounds crazy, but Bruce used to argue on this same program that nobody spends all this money hoping something will fail. They want to give everything the best shot they got at getting a return on that investment. And that makes good, logical, as we say in Alabama, walking around sense. But I can't wrap my head around, I'm going to give this guy $1 million a year at a time where I'm not just willy-nilly handing out those contracts. I mean, 1999 is the year that WWE is sold out as soon as you announce that you're on sale. But JR at some point in this year will go to Jeff Jarrett and cut his money. And now at the same time, we're bringing in a guy, paying him $1 million a year. Jeff was not at $1 million a year, by the way, and then beat him clean on TV right away. Was that more about, I want to get a return on this investment in Paul Wight? Or was it really more about, I want to prove to this wrestling fan base that WWF is superior to WCW in every way? Because at that point, WCW is still around.
Yep. And I think it's both. I mean, it's like we talked last week about the NWA. There is zero chance that Vince is going to bring somebody in with the NWA title and put them over anybody of stature on the WWE roster. Zero chance. He had to fight them in the territory wars. Not going to happen. I mean, this is left over from Crockett. This is now Ted Turner. You know, Ted Turner tried to put him out of business. Here comes their giant that they build as Andre the Giant's son, this massive star that they are putting out here and now bring to WWE. There's zero chance he's going to go. He's not going to get heat on Steve. There's no way it's going to happen. I thought it was the wrong move because I didn't think they should have beat him. I thought that was the wrong move. But Vince, I think, wanted two things. He wanted, one, prove he's in charge, and two, send a message down to WCW that Stone Cold is the man and can't nobody on your roster beat him. And I felt like Vince knew that he was going to rebuild him as a giant after this. I don't think there was any doubt about it. Vince just wanted to make that point that our top guy is better than your giant. And I think that was what was in Vince's mind.
As a reminder, he's coming in on what I believe was discussed as being a 10-year, $1 million deal. So not like $100,000 a year, but $1 million a year for 10 years. This was sort of unheard of in this era, was it not, John? That any contract for a WWE talent would be for 10 years, much less $1 million deal for a 10-year. Like once upon a time, that was the high watermark that you had to work to achieve. Whether you were Stone Cold or you were The Rock or you were The Undertaker or eventually you were Triple H, everyone was sort of capped at $1 million. And that's not to say you couldn't make more than that. You certainly could, but that was going to be the maximum base contract that anybody got. And that's what Big Show's getting here. When he comes in, does everybody in the locker room know it's for $1 million for 10 years? And how quickly does that spread? And what is the backlash, if any, on the talent when something like that happens?
It spread pretty quick, and I don't know if we knew right away, but yeah, of course it spread. Once the guys find out that everybody tells everybody about it. I don't think there was any animosity toward Show with that. I think there was animosity toward the world that we're out here working. We're the ones building this business. I understand he's a huge star. Mark Henry when he came in got a 10-year deal, which is the first we'd ever heard of. Mark Merrill got the first, I believe, the first guaranteed contract. Back before that, we weren't getting any guaranteed nothing. And those contracts, as Vince would say, they aren't worth the paper they're written on. And, every contract, I don't care what you got, it had a 90-day out in it. They could fire you. And they'll in the contract for any reason. I mean, they wake up on the wrong side of the bed and want to fire you. They're within their legal rights to do that. They can terminate your contract. So I don't care. You have a 90-day contract is what you have that rolls over. That's what you really have. You don't have a 4 or 5 year contract. Now, I don't know how Big Show's was structured. I have no idea about any of that, but our contracts were basically 90 days rolling over. When I was my biggest year, I think, let me do the math, I made 9 times my downside. So that's how little my downside was. Now I made good money. I'm not going to give any more out there because we had a confidentiality contract, and I've always thought I should honor that because that was what I told Vince I would do, and he did as well. And so, but 9 times. I mean, that's how high the upside could be. That's why guys work so hard. That's why I always thought that was I wish pro sports did it that way. I wish Aaron Judge, he's hitting the ball into a different area code right now, had a downside contract. He'd still be making his $50 million because he's hitting so many home runs. But I wish all these guys had that. It certainly made us work harder and made us keep up with the business. We could tell you how big the crowd was, how many pay-per-views. We kept up with all of that because that was our pay.
By the way, as a reminder, this is $19.99. So if you were to throw that in your handy-dandy inflation calendar or calculator, you would see that Big Show's $1 million in $1999 is $1.9 million in 2025 dollars. 1.9 is high cotton even today in 2025, is it not, John?
Absolutely, it sure is. And I think Big Show's worth it. I really do. I think it's worth it what you bring into the company. He's the only true giant in the world that has the ability that he has. He is an incredible athlete. He's incredibly glib. He can talk. He's a very smart guy. I think it was worth every penny of it, in my opinion. And nobody had any bad feelings towards Show. We wish that we'd have got the contract. We did it. There was some jealousy, but it wasn't jealousy in a bad way. It was just, hey, I want to be that guy that gets a contract. People go, why did he get that? But that's what we used to always joke about that. We always want to be that guy that people say, why is he getting so much money? I always want to be that guy. So we weren't mad at Show. We were mad at the world.
You said a minute ago, in WWE, you didn't really have a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year deal. You had a 90-year deal or a 90-day deal, and they could let you go at any point. I want you to think about, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about this. When you think about those who were dismissed by WWE, all the years that you were there around the business, the firings, the releases that sort of came out of nowhere, who was the biggest head scratcher? While you're thinking about that, I want to remind everybody that I don't have to scratch my head anymore when it comes to gaming. Turtle Beach has me hooked up. I just played my buddy Matt Kuhn in NBA 2K. Of course, I whipped his ass yesterday, and I did it with the help of my Stealth 700 headset. What was great about that is I got to talk trash to him the entire time. And then when Double J called me on his way to the pay-per-view, guess what? I got to answer it on the same headset. And I got to whip Kuhn's ass to a soundtrack. Yep, I had old school hip-hop playing in my phones as I'm just dunking all over him in 2K. This is my favorite gaming experience now. I don't think it can be beat. I'm a big believer in the Stealth 700. And what I really like about it, well, there's a lot to like about it. You hear things you don't normally hear when you're playing the game. So whenever he would brick, I could hear the rim reverberate. And whenever I would dunk on his ass with Shaq, I could hear the rim reverberate. There's lots of little things when I would block a shot. You can hear the fingerprints hitting the ball. I've never heard that through the regular television speakers. The game is more fun. The trash talking is more fun, but I can also multitask. But what I like best about it, and I really think this is probably the strongest feature of the Stealth 700, is the 80-hour battery life. I've been using mine for over a month. It hasn't died yet. I haven't had to charge it yet at all. I absolutely love it. And I've not been a big headset guy, but I'm loving that I can do all that multitasking. And that's because the Stealth 700 has the industry's first ever cross-play dual wireless transmitter system. Said plainly, that means you can seamlessly switch between your console, your PC, just with a click of a button. And while you're connected to your console, the Stealth 700 can connect with your phone to stream music or take calls all at the same time. So you can listen to your favorite songs while gaming, all done with the Stealth 700. Go check out Turtle Beach. Head to turtlebeach.com right now and use our promo code WRESTLE. You'll get 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with the promo code WRESTLE. Now, after you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you and get the ultimate immersive gaming experience with Turtle Beach today. So, John, I teased you beforehand and said, hey, man, who was the biggest head scratcher when these news of releases and firings from your history from, say, 1995 to now, is there one that really stands out as a head scratcher to you? Like, why the hell did this not work? How is that guy or that gal not going to be here?
Yeah, I always thought Jeff Jarrett was the one. And you mentioned murder, so that's like low-hanging fruit. I understand that. But I always thought Jeff Jarrett was the one because, you see what happened in history. Jeff went on and he really helped TNA. He helped other companies. It'd been better just to keep him on payroll. Plus, he was a draw. I thought Jeff did a great job. And I thought Jeff was a terrific talent. I never understood why they would want to cut his salary to make him go somewhere else, which he did and made more money. I mean, and usually, if you cut somebody, they can't go anywhere else because they don't have much value. That's when you cut the right person. When they cut somebody, they can't go anywhere else. You did the right thing. I thought Jeff was a complete mistake.
I think everybody agrees on that. I do wonder, with the benefit of hindsight, was there an upside for Jeff to stick around? He'd been the Intercontinental Champion over and over and over. And I know he was doing the angles with the women and crushing them with figure fours and guitars and everything in between. But he was one of the hottest heels that the company had at that point.
Yeah.
So to go to him while he's one of the hottest heels and cut his money when the buildings are sold out immediately, and he knows now that there's a personal issue with the top draw in Steve Austin, it does feel like Jeff recognized, hey, there is a glass ceiling here. That as long as Stone Cold's on top and JR's his boy, because that is the narrative that was out there, whether it's fair or not, and my money got cut when we're sold out everywhere, where can I go to advance my career, whether that means on camera or financially? I think he had to bet on himself to leave. So I'm wondering, is it all, when you see someone make a departure like this, is it always just, because I think about the Big Show making the move to jump over. Like, we knew that Eric Bischoff was trying to pay him more and trying to retain his services, but Big Show just felt like Vince could make him a bigger star.
Yeah.
And I feel like Jeff maybe felt similarly in the WWF that, hey, this is my ceiling here. I don't need to bet on myself. Maybe I can be a bigger star over there. Is it politics or talent deciding, what's best for them more often than not, do you think?
Politics or talent, from the talent's perspective or from the office perspective?
Either way. I mean, I know it's a two-way street, but like sometimes the talent is dictated to, and hey, here's what we want you to do. And then other times, the talent's like, hey, this doesn't work for me, brother. And I know that it all comes down to, as JR says, the cash and the creative. So while you and I have spent a lot of time talking about this $1 million guarantee, creatively, I wonder, because what we've heard from Eric is Paul Wight, the real life Big Show, said to him, I think Vince McMahon will make me a bigger star.
Yeah.
Then when he gets there in his first match, he's losing.
Right.
I'm just fascinated by the subculture of wrestling and the paranoia that goes on and the political gamesmanship, because there's no such thing as, well, when it gets to this point, then we cut. I don't think anybody could wrap their head around why Jeff Jarrett's money was cut or why Vince McMahon would have Big Show lose his debut. Like, neither one of those makes sense to me.
Yeah, and Jeff, I know he did have an issue with Steve, over something, and something maybe personal, and I don't know the whole situation, but, I don't know if that carried over to JR. Something carried over to JR because they cut his money. I don't understand that. And, a lot of guys, you look at guys, and I've talked to a lot of guys when they're making career decisions. Fortunately, I had this, background in finance. So a lot of guys have felt that, that they can talk to me, and hopefully I've helped them. And so talked to a lot of guys over the years, and Jeff could have done the easy thing. He could have stayed there. Houses are sold out. Hope that he makes much higher than his downside, or he could leave and bet on himself. That's a tough decision. I've seen a lot of guys have to make this decision, and I've seen most of the guys take the decision of, I'm going to take the sure thing. I'm going to take the sure paycheck, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. And I'm going to stay here and hope that things get better. I can promise you that usually doesn't happen. They do get the money, by the way. They do get the money. But if they're not being pushed before that, they're not going to be pushed after. If you're not being pushed with a guarantee that's this, if you downsize them 30, 40%, you're not going to be pushed with that either. You're certainly not going to be pushed with that. And a lot of guys, most that I've talked to, have just decided to stay. Very few are like Jeff, who got a real backbone and are really smart guys and will say, I'm going to go and make a bigger name. And if I don't come back, I don't care. And if I do, it's going to cost you a ton of money. And Brock Lesnar did it. Brock was on the cover of the video game. Brock was our guy. He was really the next big thing. And he decided to leave and go to the NFL and then go to the UFC. Me and Taker both flew out there to watch his first big fight, and I was so excited. Because I was pulling for him. We wanted him to succeed. But what a gamble he made. I mean, he could have, man, that could have been a disaster. Now, Brock bet on himself. He knew he was the toughest guy on the planet, basically. He knew he'd do well, but he turned down millions and millions and millions of dollars to bet on himself. Cody Rhodes did the same thing. Cody could have stayed and made 400, 500,000 a year, whatever it was. I have no idea. I'd say don't quote me on that. People out there are going to quote whatever they want, take it out of context. But Cody could have stayed and made a good salary as Stardust, and his career just kind of keep petering off. Instead, he made a bet on himself. Those three guys are the very few that did this. Most of them would just take the money, stay there, keep their mouth shut, and take that guaranteed paycheck, which there's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's a job.
It's a job. Yes. To bet on yourself, bro, that takes balls. I mean, real freaking balls to go all in on the poker table and go, you know what? I'm going all in on myself. Now, if I fail, I'm broke. But if I succeed, I'm headlining every WrestleMania. And that's what Cody and Brock did. Jeff goes off, creates a company, creates another, and he's still to this day making great money, which it tells you a lot about him that he was willing to do that.
Silly question, doesn't really matter in the scheme of things, but I am curious. You said you and Taker went to see Brock Lesnar's MMA debut. Are you talking about his UFC debut against Frank Mir or the one he did for the other group? I think it was Pride in the Coliseum. Those are a really tall Asian competitor. I forget his name, but he's like 7 feet tall. Were you at that one, which was more of a sideshow spectacle, or were you at the UFC debut where Frank Mir?
The UFC one in Vegas. We flew out there to go to the fight and sat there, had a front row seats, and unfortunately, that's where he got caught in the knee bar. He was winning the fight.
Yeah.
You saw in the next fight that the return with Frank Mir. Same thing. He just didn't make a silly mistake. He just made a mistake, got caught in a knee bar, and unfortunately, that was it. But it was out there in Vegas with Frank Mir. We're very excited to see him fight.
Ant is telling us in the comments that it was indeed a K1 show. That was the outdoor stadium show. I was at the show where he fought and beat Randy Couture. And the idea that he beat Randy Couture to become the champ, like being in that building, there were a handful of hardcore, devout, loud wrestling fans. But boy, Brock Lesnar came in there as a heel. These MMA people, these MMA fans wanted this phony wrestler to get beat up.
Oh.
Well, that did not happen. And it was quite the run that Brock had for himself.
That's why I thought Jake Hager should have kept fighting.
Yes.
He had such heel. I mean, he had real riot heel heat in MMA.
Yes.
And he was winning his fights, and telling everybody he's the best in the world. People wanted so badly to see Jake get beat. They'd have paid a fortune if he kept fighting. I just thought it was fantastic. And I thought it's great what Brock did. And that's what I'm telling everybody about being a heel. People get tired of hearing the old guy talk about, that's how we did it in our day. No, that's how they do it now if you want to draw money. And Brock did that and stayed consistent with who he was, or at least who he was portraying, which doesn't matter if you can't distinguish them. And Brock drew as much money as anybody in the history of MMA and wrestling. I mean, it's just incredible what he did. But he did it because he stayed true to himself.
I don't know if you saw, but a fan posted a photo online. Maybe it was Snapchat or Instagram. I don't know, but I saw some news sites pick it up. But they ran into Brock Lesnar in real life, and the fan was a wrestling fan, of course, and said, "Hey, are you coming back to WWE?" And Brock reportedly told the fan, and again, we weren't there, "No, I'm retired." Do you think Brock Lesnar is actually retired, or do you think we see him again? It's hard for me to imagine to think we never see him again.
I find it hard to believe. One of the pictures I saw recently of him, he still looks great. I mean, Brock looks fantastic. Brock is a once in a lifetime look. I mean, there's no one that looks like that guy, and he still looks great. Brock can come back and still have matches with whoever. Him and Cody would be great. He can. Yes, I hope he comes back. And I can't see Brock staying on the ranch up there in Canada forever, and at least not coming back a little bit. Brock's got plenty of money. He's got a great ranch up there and a great business that he's up there with, I think, with his brother, and he's happy up there. But, like anybody, you still like the limelight and the temptation to come back. And it's not just the limelight. There's going to be a figure that comes that has 2 commas in it that they're going to offer him to come back. And I think he'll take it, and I hope he does.
I hope he does too. I'd like to see Brock Lesnar finish his let's have an official in-ring, on-camera send-off. I like when we get the final match and we know it's the final match going in. I do want to ask you about Big Show, because once he comes over, we mentioned that he has a big debut on the pay-per-view and he's aligned against Stone Cold Steve Austin. He loses on Raw, but at some point that summer, he finds himself in a tag team with The Undertaker, and they're going to win the tag titles over the course of the summer. You actually get some shots against them. I know Taker's your guy. What do you think of this tag team, Big Show and The Undertaker together?
It's like the Brothers of Destruction. They're basically an unbeatable team is what they are. You wish those guys had been around against the Road Warriors in their prime. As I thought it was the same with Big Show. You've got the one giant in the world, at least the one giant that is actually, a true giant that has athleticism, that can talk. I know there's other people out there that are as tall or maybe even as big. I don't know if they're, but the world's got 8 billion people. I'm sure there's other giants out there, but the one giant that do what he does, he's the only one. Really talented human being. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought, because it paints everybody else into a picture like, who's going to beat these two guys? I mean, what are you going to do against them? It's just the unstoppable force and the immovable object are on the same team. I thought it's fantastic.
I do want to ask you, when you're thinking about Big Show and we're talking about what's next for him, I know that there's been a lot of criticism about the way he was debuted and used in his first year, but I think people forget he winds up winning the championship in that same calendar year. So he makes the debut in February, but it's Survivor Series 99 where Steve Austin is injured. He got, we hit that MF with a car, so he's out. We're going to find out later that Rikishi did it for The Rock. But first, we need a replacement for Steve Austin in this 3-way with The Rock and Triple H. And it's going to be Big Show, and he walks away as the champ. So, that's the way it goes in real sports. If you've got your starter and he goes down with an injury, it creates an opportunity. When he comes in, and maybe it feels like the company is nonplussed by him because he doesn't immediately get pushed to the stratosphere, but he finishes the year with a title win. Does that ruffle any feathers in the locker room, or does nobody care by 99 who's champ?
No, we like Big Show. I don't think there's any problem with it. And by the way, it's an interesting parallel to Brock in MMA. Brock comes in, he's this incredible figure. He looks incredible. And he can draw money just by the way you look at him. And he can talk. He's a very smart guy. And Frank Mir beats him, in less than a couple of minutes. He catches him in that knee bar. And then Brock becomes a UFC champion and becomes the biggest draw, at least at one point in the history of their sport. I mean, very interesting parallel there between that and what Big Show did. I understand losses do matter. It depends on how they're done. But I guarantee you when he came in and Vince beat him and he's sending a message that WWE is better than WCW because here's your John. And he's sending a message, he's the boss. I understand all that. Vince also had in the back of his mind, I'm going to rebuild this guy. There's no way he signs him for 10 years for $1 million a year and thinks I'm going to bury this guy. Absolutely zero chance of that. I think he thought he could send a message, and Vince knew enough and had enough confidence in himself that I'm going to rebuild this guy and make him into the second coming of Andre.
Well, we know that that doesn't exactly happen that way, but before we get there, we should mention that you wound up having some matches against him in 2002, I believe, for the hardcore title. You and I have never spent any time really talking about a hardcore match, but back when the hardcore title was a thing, obviously this is going to be a much different style match. What'd you think of the hardcore style matches, and how was that different as far as thinking about how to put together a match versus just a traditional match?
It's probably why I'm going to be hunting Easter eggs I hid pretty soon in a few years with all the hardcore titles. We just beat each other half to death. You know, we'd have the cookie sheets out there and just get – nobody stuck their hands up or nothing. You know, we just got hit with it. And they were fun. You know, tearing up stuff's fun. The bar fights me and Ron did were fun. The hardcore stuff was fun. Trying to put it together was fun, especially because – there's only so much, not so much. There's a lot of things you can do in a hardcore match. There's only certain ways to get there and to do those things. You know, you're limited to chairs, cookie pans, rails that will break and stuff like that. So, you know, after a while, it gets repetitive, which is the scary part because you had to figure out a way to make stuff new and figure out a way to different ways to get to things, different ways to make things happen. That was the fun part.
Well, we also want to spend a little bit of time talking about your matches against Big Show in 2004. This is when he's the U.S. champ. So at that point, he's the heel and you're the baby face. I know every wrestler I've ever talked to says that playing the heel is much more fun. Is the dynamic different when your opponent is a giant? Like, I understand that sometimes the natural order of things is we love the David versus Goliath thing. So you're not exactly a small man. You'd be the largest David there ever was. But the inverse of that, where you've got a baby-face giant, is that more difficult to put together as opposed to a heel giant? It feels like a heel giant is kind of easy.
Heel giant's incredibly easy. You could do that in your sleep. That's easy. He's going to beat you up, and you're going to fight from underneath, and you're going to try to come back. That's very, very easy. That's why Undertaker's run was so incredible, because he's a huge guy. And for him to be a babyface for all those years, that was tough to put him out there against guys who some are a lot smaller than him. And for Big Show, everybody's a lot smaller than him. So when he's the babyface, it's tough because you got to find a way to get heat on him. And that's tough to do because it's got to be believable. And it's tough when a guy outweighs you by 200 pounds and he's a real giant, an actual giant walking around in wrestling boots, to get heat on that guy because a lot of people just don't believe it.
Well, something you won't believe is how great your product looks at paintyourlife.com. I have bragged about this sponsor for years here on the program, and I want to get ahead of it this year for you for Mother's Day or Father's Day. I've given this gift to my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and my mom and dad, and it hits every single time. I really want you to think about this. What did you give your mom and dad last year for Mother's Day and Father's Day? I bet you don't remember, and even worse, I know they don't remember. But paintyourlife.com can give you a truly meaningful gift that mom and dad will never forget. And if you're looking for that gift, look no further than paintyourlife.com. That's where you can get a professional hand-painted portrait created from any photo at a truly affordable price. And here's how it works. You upload photos to create anything you can imagine. You could even put yourself in a location you've always wanted to visit. You could add a lost loved one to a special occasion to create the portrait of your dreams. There's lots of options too. You can choose your own artist. You choose the medium, and then you can even select from a variety of quality frames. That's right. It can show up framed. And here's the best part. You're communicating directly with the artist to make sure the portrait is exactly like you dreamed. You can get it in as little as 2 weeks. And by the way, it's meaningful, it's personal, it's always heartwarming. And I've given lots of gifts through the years, but this is one I know anytime I go visit, my gift is hanging on the wall. Like, they're proud of this. They'll never take it down. And when people come over, they'll brag about it. And guess what? They say, oh, my son got me that. Oh, my daughter got me that. Paint Your Life transforms your photos into a one-of-a-kind, beautiful hand-painted portrait, all done by professional artists, and you can give the most meaningful gift you've ever given at Paint Your Life. There's no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money's refunded, guaranteed. And right now is a limited time offer. You can get 20% off your painting. That's right, 20% off and free shipping. Now, to get this special offer, just text the word Wrestle to 87204. That's Wrestle to 87204. Text Wrestle to 87204. Paint your life. Celebrate the moments that matter most. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Hey, so let's talk a little bit about, the sort of what if situation, because there's been a lot written about the idea that when Eddie Guerrero's looking for opponents, Kurt Angle's out with injuries, Big Show's out with injuries. We know Brock Lesnar has very abruptly left the company, and that's when JBL is created, and you're sort of repackaged and given this main event push. We know you become the world champ, but in an almost butterfly type effect situation. If Big Show's not out injured, do they wind up doing a feud with Eddie and Big Show? Because that looks like David and Goliath. Do you think, in a weird way, Big Show's injury perhaps created an opportunity for you to thrive as JBL?
I've never thought about which injury the most caused that. Obviously Brock, had just worked with Eddie. Probably wouldn't go forward with Brock. And Kurt and Eddie would, God Almighty, you saw what they did. They're just fantastic. Yes. But it makes perfect sense for Big Show to be in that role. So yeah, I guess the old Big Show, my title run and everything else. So thank you to my friendly giant friend. I hadn't thought about that, but yes, the matches that they could have with Eddie as the champion, my God, man, that would have been something fans remember for the rest of their lives. That would have been fantastic.
And we do know that eventually Big Show's back. He's feeling better. He's worked off the injuries. He's ready to get back at it. And as he turns babyface upon his return, that leads to a feud with you that really is probably your last major program before you drop the title to John Cena. Let's talk about what happened towards the end of 2004 as we cruise into 2005. Meltzer would say, the Smackdown notes from December 30th, this was from New Orleans, and it seemed in many ways WCW-like. It was the Night of Champions as ordered by Teddy Long, but all the champs could choose their opponents, and then the logic went out the window. Cena chose Dupree and pinned him with an FU in a bad match, and the JBL show program is apparently caused by women. Amy Weber, who's with JBL, and Joy Giovanni, the married mother who is apparently having an affair with Big Show. The women were in each other's faces about each other gaining weight over the holidays, and JBL got in Giovanni's face, which brought out Show. Show wanted a title match, and JBL said he'd take it under consideration. So it's an interesting way to get to this, but you and I have never spent any time talking about these two ladies. What can you tell us about Amy Weber and Joy Giovanni?
Amy was fantastic. I didn't know her at all until when they brought her in. Zero. I had zero input in it. Vince found her somewhere. I don't know if it was through a diva search or something. I have no idea what it was. She wasn't in wrestling. I think she trained some after she got in case she ever had to get in the ring, which she didn't. I don't believe, but she was fantastic. Vince told me when it called me in there and said, "Hey, we've got this young lady going to work with you as your image consultant." And he told me about her. I met her, and she was just fantastic. Vince was very high on her, and for good reason. She was very good at what she did. I had a lot of respect for Amy and for her talent, especially coming from somewhere. I'm not sure where it was because I didn't know her name until literally the first day that I met her. And that day that I met her, I walked out on TV with her. It was a Vince find. I don't know where he got her or found her or I don't know. I thought it was through a diva search, but I could be wrong.
We know that we keep this going the next week on SmackDown. It's written, Angle went into what he thought was Amy's dressing room and heard the shower running. He started undressing and the shower opened, but it was Giovanni who needed a shower to wash the apple off her face. She screamed, got a towel, and ran out. In the building, because the fans don't know about the new woman, nobody can understand this segment, and apparently nobody knew the difference between Weber and Giovanni. Angle was chasing her down to apologize, saying he thought it was Weber's dressing room. Jeff Jarrett says sometimes confuse them, you lose them. Do you think we were introducing too many new women with similar looks at the same time? Did we confuse the fans a little bit with this story?
I don't know. It's first I'd heard of that. I guess they did have kind of a similar look, I guess. But we wouldn't say that about two guys coming in together.
Oh, there you go.
Are we introducing too many guys? So, no, I don't think so. I just think we didn't. If there was confusion, it's because we didn't do a good enough job defining who was who. That's on us. That's not on them. They're in there doing their jobs. But how funny is Kurt Angle? Is he not the best? Here's a guy. He's Olympic gold medalist.
Yes,
and he's doing this horseshit comedy.
Yes,
that is world class. He's so good at it. Me and Kurt got stuck out there so many times. They're like, "Oh, Johnny Kurt, go do something funny," whatever it was. And I'm out there with this gold medalist, and he could do anything. His facial expressions, everything about Kurt. He wasn't trained to do anything except wrestle and beat people. And it's just something about Kurt he's just the most entertaining guy.
There's no doubt. We haven't spent any time talking about Teddy Long either, and I know he's become an internet meme in recent years for his time as SmackDown general manager. But man, that guy, there's something about him that's just entertaining. I mean, I really enjoyed his job as a GM. What do you think of his job, and what can you tell us about Teddy Long behind the scenes?
He's the cheapest son of a bitch ever walked on God's green earth is what he is. He owes me and Ron thousands of dollars in trans and hotels and meals to this day. So and by the time interest comes in, that man owes us everything. Basically everything he has, he owes me and Ron. Ron used to say Teddy's so cheap he still got Confederate money. So,
oh my God.
So Teddy rode with me and Ron forever. I cannot. There's not enough nice words in the world for me to say about Teddy Long. I love that man. He sends me now pictures of his dog Rufus because me and Ron used to call him Theodore Rufus Long. So he named his dog Mr. Rufus because we called him Rufus for so long. And he sends me videos and pictures all the time of his dog. He's got this dog, his beautiful dog that he loves. I love it, and I love working with Teddy. We had so much fun together. We played off each other, I thought, so well. We had, oh my God. We were in like Fresno one time or something, and I'm out there, berating him and all this stuff. And Teddy says to me, we're in San Bernardino or something like that. We're not in Fresno. Teddy says, "I will not let you come out here and abuse these people of Fresno." And so I tell him under my breath, I said, "Teddy, we're in San Bernardino." And he goes, and Teddy thinks I'm ribbing him with something. So he goes, "I've said I will not let these people, great people of Fresno, be insulted." He said it again. I'm like, "You got it. Oh my God, give me the microphone." And I said, "Oh, Teddy, all these Mexicans, migrants look alike." I said, "Doesn't matter. I can't tell the difference either." And so they're like, "Oh, screw you." And then, so Teddy looked at me and goes, "Oh, thank you." Thank you very much. We had a blast working together. We had so much fun. Teddy and I didn't need a script. Teddy and I didn't need nothing. We had so much fun working together.
Well, let's talk about some creative that was maybe a little less than. I can't believe they did this, but it happened in early 05 on SmackDown in Tampa. We're going to announce after some back and forth that we're going to have a singles match between Amy Weber and Joy Giovanni. Giovanni never came out. So for the next 20 minutes of the show, it's built around trying to find her. So Teddy Long is on the case, and he's asking you and Carlito, but you guys have no idea. And it's written here, Tori Wilson and Jackie Gata, now relegated to being the B-team women who are backstage for no apparent reason, told Long that the last they saw of Giovanni, Jordan was hot on her tail. And next came the big presentation. JBL is given a gift here from the Florida Agricultural Group. I'll let you see if that organization has initials and figure that out on your own. And they named you the Man of the Year. And Angle is helping aid in this investigation, and he's going to confront JBL. And he's uncovered that Giovanni was unconscious, and she's in the trunk of JBL's limo. She's rushed to the hospital. She needs oxygen. And Big Show's mad, and he destroys the cabinet. But goodness gracious. I know we're trying to do some shock jock stuff.
There's a lot of things to unpack in that one. Woo! Woo! Let me get my Texas mug.
Yeah, while you're thinking about that, what do you listen, in the book of bad ideas, doing an award ceremony like this has got to be near the top of the list. Talking about things that don't age well, right?
I don't think you can find this on the WWE Network anymore.
It's scrubbed off of it, is it?
I think it was, yeah. I don't know for that for sure. If somebody's out there and can find it, please find it. But I think that's how bad of an idea it was. Yes. Yeah, it was up there. I can't believe you dug that up. That's great.
I'll be honest, I kind of forgot that it even happened until we started doing research for the show. And then it's like, oh man, this is not the best idea.
Not the best idea. The storyline wasn't really played out well. I don't think with the two ladies, they're both very attractive and very, very smart, very good at what they do, but they had not been invested in, enough that when someone's kidnapped, there's not a cry out for it, as it would be if it was a Tori Wilson or a Stacy Keibler or something like that, and they were talented enough to be that way, but they weren't invested enough to be in it. And I thought that was just a mistake WWE made.
And listen, I understand that people always use the argument, hey, well, they could do this in a movie, but I don't think we're going to see any women kidnapped and thrown into trunks anytime soon on WWE either.
No, and I don't think anybody really believed it. It was one of those, you try stuff sometimes and it works. You try Papa Shango making the Warrior throw up, and people we're into Papa Shango. You have lightning bolts coming out of the ceiling from Kane or Undertaker, and people are into that. But then you try something like this, it just didn't work. The whole thing fell flat.
You've got a double agent in Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is going to be trying to butter up Big Show on SmackDown, saying, hey, we can join up and take out JBL together. It looks like that's going to happen. And then what do you know? The Cabinet and Kurt Angle all lay waste to Big Show. He's left laying after an angle slam and a chair shot. He's all bloody. The EMTs are attending to him. I know that the use of blood has always been sort of hokey pokey about when it's allowed and when it's not allowed. Were you always an advocate of the use of blood? Did you always feel like you could find a way to be effective in a big match, a title match, something like that?
No, I don't think I was an advocate, but I thought at certain times it made sense. With my heel run, I juiced a lot, but I thought that was my character. That I got my ass whooped, and especially when I was going over, I had no problem. Of course, I had no problem at all doing it anyway. It was not a big deal to me. But juicing when you're going over, I thought was, to me, much to my advantage, because now I'm getting my ass whooped, and I'm almost beat to death. And I find a way to win, and I brag about the fact that I just kicked my opponent's ass, which everybody knows that I didn't. And I thought it was good heat for me.
We want to take just a minute here and talk about, something everybody should know. Did you know that the average testosterone level in United States men has dropped 1% every year since 99? That means today's man has significantly less testosterone than previous generations. And it's not just age. Everyday exposure to chemicals in food, grooming products, and the environment is accelerating this decline. You can't always avoid these factors, but you can take action to protect your health and performance. And that's where Test X9 comes in. This message is brought to you by Nick Aldis. He's, of course, the WWE SmackDown general manager and former world champion himself. And Test X9 is a clinically supported all-natural testosterone support formula to help you fight back and perform at your peak. Test X9 combines 9 powerful, clinically studied ingredients shown to naturally stimulate testosterone production while blocking excess estrogen conversion. You'll find no fluff and no gimmicks, just real ingredients backed by science, with independent studies for each one available directly on the product page so you can verify the results yourself. How about that? But Test X9 goes above and beyond just testosterone. With magnesium activation technology, it's designed to help improve strength, energy, recovery, and even sleep, giving you more power, sharper focus, and the resilience to take on whatever life throws your way. Nick Aldis knows what it takes to succeed both physically and mentally at the highest level, and Test X9 was built with that same mindset. Whether you're training hard or chasing goals or just want to feel like your best self again, Test X9 is the edge you've been looking for. So don't let the decline continue. Head on over to legacysupps.com. That's legacysupps.com and use our code WRESTLE. You'll get 10% off your entire order. That's code WRESTLE for 10% off. Stop the decline with Test X9. Hey, so let's talk about your Royal Rumble match. It is going to indeed be a three-way, and you're going to get the win over Kurt Angle and Big Show. Angle's going to hit Big Show with a TV monitor as he's standing on the steps. Big Show's going to fall backwards with an ST plunge type bump through the Smackdown announce table. He eventually makes a comeback. Show's going to do a running tackle that sends you through the barricades. They're going to bring the stretcher out. Here come the Bashams. Angle's trying to bring in a chair, but Show's going to stop him. And Mark Jindrak's going to pull the ref out of the ring. And then Luther Reigns attacks Show. And as Reigns and Jindrak are beating up Show, you're going to stagger into the ring, hit a clothesline on Kurt Angle, and pin him. And it's reported by Dave Meltzer that Michael Cole was almost selling it like you're a babyface because you're the survivor and you've survived this. Star and 3/4. What do you remember of this Royal
Star and 3/4?
Star and 3/4.
I'm out there with a gold medalist and the world's only giant. And
well, it's really Kurt Angle's fault if you think about it. Because did you know, John, that never did he ever have 5 stars? So it's not your fault. It's Dave Meltzer having an anti-Kurt Angle bias.
It makes perfect sense now because if Kurt Angle hadn't been there, we'd have probably got 5 or like a very rare 6 stars.
We all know that.
I always knew Kurt was holding me back. I knew that.
Right.
I knew that all along.
It's 5 stars, or maybe 4 3/4. Because
I remember I tagged with Kurt a lot of times, and I remember just sitting there thinking, "Man, if this guy just knew how to wrestle, we would be much better."
Somebody needs to take the time to show him how to work one day,
right?
But maybe one day. Hey, no, seriously, what do you think of working this? It's a 3-way. I've heard a lot of guys use the phrase anytime it's a multi-man match like this, they call it a cluster F. Did you feel that way about 3-ways?
They could be disasters. I agree. They could be, especially like a fatal 4-way. Oh my God, man! I mean, you got to figure out a way for 2 guys to take a bump, then 2 guys can do their spots, then 2 other guys take a bump. It's like a Texas tornado match. You always, a Texas tornado match can be tough. I'm talking about, a tag team match where all 4 guys are legal. You always got to be watching because if your partner's is up, you got to be up. If your partner's down, you got to be down. You don't want one side selling, one partner selling, and one guy beating the other guy up because the crowd split. So you always got to figure out how to coordinate that. A triple threat can turn into a disaster. Thank God I'm out there with 2 guys who are, Kurt's in the Hall of Fame. Big Show will be 2 Hall of Famers. For very, those guys, no matter what happens, Vince used to always say nothing can go wrong. And what he meant was it's live. I got pros out there. No matter what happens, we're going to be fine. I felt that way with Big Show and Kurt. I knew no matter what happened, we're going to figure out a way out of it. But how dare those Lucha guys have so many run-ins? We don't do shit like that. You just mentioned half our roster that had run in.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, you had a lot of support from the cabinet, to say the least. I do want to ask you something that you and I've never spoke about, but I thought was great. It came up in our research. I kind of forgot about this until I read it, and I was like, oh, yeah, I never asked him about that. You were in Halifax, and you're going to grab the mic, and you're going to go out of your way to shake the referee's hand. It's who we know as Baby Hebner. It's Brian Hebner, Earl's son, and you're going to thank him on the mic for his father screwing Bret Hart out of the title. And you do that in Halifax. What a genius idea to drop that line in Canada. Do you come up with that on your own? Is it an agent? Take us back. What was the reaction? Do you just feel an overwhelming sense of satisfaction as the boos rain in?
Yes. I thought about that, I think, in the afternoon about that, and I just kept it to myself. I thought this is going to be great. I couldn't wait to get out there. And when I did it, Hebner goes, yeah, thanks a lot. I'm going to get stabbed walking out of this arena now. And Hebner just sold it all. Hebner, that little baby Hebner, he's a tough guy. He saved me a couple times from fans. You don't want to run into a Hebner. Hebner will knock you out. Him and his dad both. You were safe out there, those guys. They would fight a fan to make sure it didn't get to you. And he did that for me a couple times. It was, yes. I was so proud of that. I said it out there and shook his hand. And while he's laughing and smiling, he's telling me at the same time, he goes, I'm going to get stabbed, aren't I? I go, yes, I hope you do, because that would be great if I said something to actually get a referee stabbed. You know, when I was overseas, I used to sing God Bless America. And I would sing it on the microphone. I'd sing the entire song. I got that from Chic. And one day I was just screwing around. I thought, I'm going to sing God Bless America. I did it as a rib, just on the boys watching. It got so much freaking heat when I do that. And so after a while, there were, people start throwing shit and all kinds of stuff in the ring, especially in Europe. So I would grab Chimmel and I would hook him where I'd stand right by him. And I'd sing God Bless America. Of course, they're throwing shit at me, but they would hit Chimmel in his nice suit and just soak him with stuff. He go, I beg you. So then I figured out a new iteration. I would sing God Bless America, and I'd have Chimmel hold up the American flag. So who are you going to throw stuff at? You're going to throw stuff at the guy with the American flag. So I would just get Chimmel besieged with, you name it, coming out of everywhere.
I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about a little bit of a snafu that happens. So this three-way dance happens at Royal Rumble for the world title. It's Kurt Angle, it's yourself, and it's Big Show. But in advance of that pay-per-view, we actually have some ads that leak out in Canadian movie theaters. And before the actual movies start, they watch a commercial promoting No Way Out. And they're promoting the main event as being JBL against the Big Show in a barbed wire match. But that actually plays before the Royal Rumble. Do you remember hearing about this sort of thing happening with any sort of regularity in WWE? Because it feels like a mistake like this happened once a year, once every couple of years. And what are the repercussions? Does Vince go on a firing spree, or what happens?
I'll tell you the repercussion we saw of one guy that worked in Canada. So we were, I think we're somewhere down in your state, the great state of Alabama, Roll Tide. And Vince was going over the commentary notes with us. And he had a problem with a press release up in Canada. And the guy had screwed it up. It was one of his PR guys that screwed it up. And he really had screwed it up. And Vince is sitting there talking to me and Michael Cole. And this is how Vince compartmentalizes stuff. So he's sitting there with us. He goes, yeah, guys, in the third match. He goes, guys, give me just a minute. And he picked up the phone and he started cussing a blue streak. It's all about this guy. He called him and he hung up on him. And he put the phone back down. He goes, I'm sorry, where were we? And we're like laughing, like, third match? So he goes, yeah, let's go. So he talked for about another 30 seconds. He goes, I'm sorry, guys, give me just a minute. Then he calls somebody else in the office and starts cussing about the same thing about this guy. And just a blue streak. Hangs up the phone. He goes, I'm sorry, guys, where were we? And he goes back to, it's like that little doll that turns, one face is the, like that, like one, that's Vince. And then he just like, I'm sorry, guys. He goes, how does a person like this become gainfully employed? And we start laughing. I said, Vince, he works for you. You hired him. That's how he becomes gainfully employed. Vince goes, I'll fix that. And he fired him. So that's how Vince handled it. Vince did not tolerate mistakes very well. And I don't think it was very common that stuff like this happened. But for that reason, because Vince, he didn't tolerate mistakes, especially when it came to talent.
Well, let's talk about what could have been a mistake. I can't wait to hear the story behind the story, because No Way Out 2005 has about 8,000 fans in the arena here in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of paper in the building, and there were some sections that are completely papered. But as you're wanting to dunk on that for being, it didn't draw well, I want to remind you, there is a massive snowstorm. So just the idea that there are 8,000 people who managed to be in the building that night saves this from being a total disaster. We know there's been pay-per-view disasters before. In Your House But Where a Dog comes to mind, where they completely lost power. And I know that there's been snow challenges. You've told the story before where you had to sort of kill time on the roof of the building several years ago. Have there ever been other big pay-per-views or big television shows that you remember being severely impacted by weather like this, to where Vince even considered canceling the show or postponing the show?
Vince wouldn't have canceled. There's no chance. I mean, we worked in our tryout match was in a state of emergency up in Pennsylvania. We were in a state of emergency when I did that thing on the roof. of Connecticut. It's going out worldwide. And because of that, what you're in there makes no difference to somebody down in Phoenix that's got 80-degree temperature, or someone that's in Europe, sitting there on the Danube that's got 60 degrees, whatever it is. So no, if the show could be run, it would be run. I've seen shows run where you stack the entire, Steve Rubin would come in and would stack the entire audience on one side of the ring, just to make it look like it was somewhat full. And Steve did an incredible job doing stuff like that. Also with seat fillers, Jerry Briscoe had seat fillers that literally a guy would get up to go to the bathroom in an important match. He wanted somebody to sit in their seat, and they'd send somebody down there to sit in it until the guy came back. Vince did not like empty seats. And so you always had to reconfigure the audience if you didn't have a sellout. And if you had something like a snow emergency, it was a massive disaster. And guys like Steve Rubin would just do incredible work getting those things done. There was a time, though, with Big Show, we're talking about Paul Wight, where he was sitting on the TV truck and it almost threw the satellite off. He was having a smoke back on the TV truck. This is when he's over 500-something pounds and almost knocked the satellite system out because he moved the truck.
My God, what a story. Hey, so I want to know the story behind the story of how you even do this with Barbwire. I know that sounds silly, but again, I mentioned this is in Pittsburgh. I know for a fact that the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission bans the use of barbed wire as a prop. I can't tell you how many times this has been an issue inside the ECW arena through the years for those talent when they were trying to use barbed wire. I think Bruce has said occasionally you take a walk with one of those state athletic commissioners, whatever that means. I guess we'll never know. But when you find out, hey, we're doing a barbed wire match, is that something you have any insight on? Do they just float it past you, or do they just say, hey, here's what we're doing, and now we're going to figure out how to do it?
Yeah, and those commission guys, they're so freaking corrupt. It was not hard to, take those guys for a walk and let them come back with their pockets a little more full. They would turn their head for anything. Those guys they're just crooks. And this match was pitched to me, I think directly by Vince or Bruce. I'm not sure. Anyway, I was told to finish right away. They had the idea for the finish, and I don't think it came from Bruce or from Vince. I had the idea of going through the limousine at SummerSlam, but this idea I had nothing to do with. This was told to me as by either Bruce or Vince. And so when they told me the barbed wire, I wasn't that worried about it because I knew what the finish was going to be.
So let's talk about it, because I think you have a story of how this was all put together, the barbed wire match. I'm wondering, in a match like this the night before or even the afternoon of, do you want to do a walkthrough when it's really complicated like this? As a reminder, they're going to do a spot sort of reminiscent of Taz and Bam Bam Bigelow in ECW, where you're going to go through the ring. So we're going to have props on the top of the cage with the barbed wire. That's a first. At that point, there had never been a quote-unquote barbed wire match ever promoted in WWE history. So the first barbed wire match here in history. But also, too, we're going to use a little Hollywood with a spot in the ring that's going to collapse. This doesn't feel like something we're just going to go figure out in front of a live crowd live on pay-per-view. Do you do a rehearsal or a walkthrough on that the day before, the week before, the day of? How does that work?
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff without any rehearsals back then. I mean, very few rehearsals. Guys just, I don't know if it's the macho thing about it or just because we just didn't do it. I have no idea why we didn't do it. It was a good idea to do it, but we just didn't do it. So we're going to do the rehearsal for this. By the way, when they're building this, Ellis, who did a great job, Ellis gets a lot of flack from a lot of guys. He's just a wonderful guy and did a lot of stunts back then. Ellis was going to build the spot in the ring. And he said, I can make it like a size of a door. I can make it, the size of like 2 doors. And Vince said, why wouldn't you make it 2 doors? He goes, I don't want John to get killed. And so Ellis goes, well, okay, I can do that if you want. Yeah, Ellis, I want that as well. So the night before, we had this ring set up, and it was like 11 o'clock or midnight. And we go over to the Pittsburgh Arena. We're the only ones in it. Finley was there because he was an agent. He was in a shirt and tie. He'd been out having a few beers, but he's an agent, so he's there. And we get up. We think, okay, we're going to go through the stunt, the entire stunt. So, what's tough on this is you're taking a big bump. And, Big Show's going to pick me up over his head. He's standing on the top rope. So I'm going down, whatever it is, 8-10 feet into the ring. I mean, it's a shocking jolt when you hit, and you're not fresh. I mean, you are fresh. You're not warmed up. You're not taking bumps, and all of a sudden at the end of the match, you go do something. It doesn't hurt. You're like sitting there. Okay, I've just been sitting around watching TV all day. Now I'm going to go through this freaking ring. So anyway, it's what we got to do to make sure it works. So Big Show gets up on the top rope. I get up on the top rope. He grabs me and starts to throw me through the ring. And Kevin Dunn is filming all of it to make sure he's the right, camera angles and stuff for the shot, and what you're going to have and what you're not going to have. Sometimes in that stuff, what you're not shooting is just as important as what you are shooting. And so Kevin's, making sure we got everything taken care of. And all of a sudden you hear over the loudspeaker, "Stop, stop, stop." He said, "If John gets hurt, we got no match tomorrow." And he said, "Somebody else has got to do this, not John." And so I said, he's actually right. And so we had already asked Ellis, "Is this going to work?" He goes, "I think you'll probably be all right." I said, "You know how many caveats there are in that one sentence?" So I said, "Well, Ellis, why don't you get up here and do the stunt?" He's a stunt guy. He goes, "Well, I'm not big enough." So I'm not, oh my God, the stunt guy now has refused to do his own stunt. And so Finley's, like I said there, he's been at the bar, he's had beers, super tough guy. He goes, "Hell, I'll do it." So Finley gets up there, climbs up there in his nice shoes, a shirt and a tie, after having a few drinks, and gets chokeslammed by Big Show through the ring. And it worked perfectly. So we knew it'd probably be fine the next night.
In the grand scheme of things, first of all, thank you for telling us that story. Bruce has not wanted to tell us some of those famous Ellis stories before. So thanks for peeling the curtain.
Ellis told me literally, he goes, "I think you'll probably be all right." I said, "You know how many caveats are on there?" I said, "What if think is wrong, or what if probably's wrong?"
Yeah.
I said, that's a serious problem, because I'm the one that's going to get broken with this.
In hindsight, should they have done a barbed wire? Why promote a barbed wire match like this in a commission state where there's a problem? Is it just based on the timeline of, hey, we know and we got to get it done in time for the next month? So
I don't remember having a problem with the commission. I mean, I never heard of a payoff for them or anything. And normally they that word would filter down to me. Somebody would tell me something had happened with the commission. So I don't think they were very worried about it. Obviously they had, the Maryland commission were assholes, and they would stop a match try to stop a card just because to prove that they're assholes. The Pittsburgh commission was not bad guys. They took money from us and all that, but that they knew the gimmick. They weren't going to stop a show. They're going to work with us if they could. Some of the commissions were very good. The New York commission was very good. Jersey commission was good. The Pennsylvania commission was fine. I mean, they were perfectly fine. The only commission really horrible in the Northeast was the Maryland commission, and they were just absolute assholes.
Speaking of stuff,
changed, by the way, I did a show the other day for James Ellsworth up here in Maryland, and they were just the nicest guys. I asked him, I said, where's the old fish head guy? He was the guy who used to run it. We used to call him Fish Head because he had this big, ugly head, looked like a fish. And they just laughed. They said, he's gone. He's long gone. There was some old guy, and fortunately, he died. So he's dead, which I doubt many people mourned him.
Only here on Something to Wrestle do you hear the phrase, "Fortunately, he died." And with that, I'll find a clever way to transition to tell you about Magic Spoon. Listen, we're talking about a lot of good stuff today, and there's no better stuff you can keep in your pantry than Magic Spoon. This show is all about nostalgia, and so is Magic Spoon. Their cereal tastes just like your favorite nostalgic cereal you grew up on in the 70s or 80s or 90s. But now you get a bowl full of protein, not a bowl full of sugar. But you already know that. But now I'm proud to tell you that they've launched a brand new high-protein granola. And true to the Magic Spoon promise, it's packed with protein and so crunchy. Speaking of crunchy, you've heard me brag on the high-protein treats. They're crispy, crunchy, airy, and an easy way to get 12 grams of protein on the go. They come in great flavors, too, like marshmallow, chocolate peanut butter, and even dark chocolate. Earlier today, I housed a double chocolate. Man, so much protein, and it tastes good. Like, you're like, how is this right? This shouldn't taste this good. And that's what you'll always feel when you have some delicious Magic Spoon. Check out their brand new granola packs. They got 13 grams of protein, 0 added sugars, and great flavors. Dark chocolate almond comes to mind, honey almond, even peanut butter. Who doesn't like peanut butter? Get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/wrestle, or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/wrestle for $5 off. So listen, we haven't spent a ton of time talking about, your actual experience overall with Big Show in the ring. When you think about your favorite opponents and things you liked about working with guys and things you didn't like about working with other guys, what did you like about working with Big Show? Was there one thing that you could hang your hat on and say, man, I loved when he did blank? He always got a great reaction when he did blank. What were the things you sort of looked forward to or enjoyed about a Big Show match?
He was safe. He was so freaking strong. I mean, he's a legitimate giant. You talk about the great giants. I don't know. Andre was apparently incredibly strong. Big Show was a legitimate giant. I mean, it hands like catcher's mitts. But when Big Show would go to pick you up, he picked you up. He didn't have to help him. I'm 280 pounds. He'd pick me up like a child. I always ribbed him, because I liked him. To this day I do. I love Big Show. He's just such a dear friend. My wife loves him. He's just a good dude. He's a good human being. Thank God he's a friendly giant. We always used to say. But I'm sitting in the back ribbing him before this match in Pittsburgh, and he goes, it's up to me to land you flat in the ring. And I said, you're right. I'll quit ribbing you till after the show. So we did the thing at the end in the Pittsburgh, we get up on the top rope. I mean, he's got to throw me a long way live. He's got one shot. And if he misses, he hurts me bad, because if you hit the edge of that, I mean, it would be a disaster if you hit the edge of the hole. So what we did was the hole was right near the corner. So we walked over the spot that had the hole to get up to the ring, to really not give away the fact that, there was something. I was going through the ring right there, which, by the way, when you fixed the ring for people to go through it, it made the rest of the ring hard as concrete. It was brutal. We did it one time with Undertaker's going through the ring, and me and Ron took a choke slam, and we rolled out. Ron goes, "Who built this ring?" And I said, "Oh my God, that hurt." A Big Show's safe as he can be, lands you flat. But, we're up on the top rope. He's got to pick up a 280-pound, 6'6" guy that's sweaty, pick him up over his head while standing on the top rope and throw me down. I can't see anything because I'm going backwards. And I've just got to trust him. But I knew 100% that Big Show would land me just where he needed to be. He's a terrific athlete, but he's so freaking strong. That's nothing to him. And sure enough, he landed me exactly where he was supposed to land. They had a monitor under there, so I'm sitting there watching the monitor, and I'm watching him when he gets to the stairs. I've also got a guy with the earpiece telling me when to stick my hand out to let me know that I've won the match. I thought the finish was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was great. And with the right guy, I can't beat Big Show. I'm not Stone Cold. And plus, I'm a heel. If I beat Big Show, my heel run's over. And plus, I got no heat for Cena at WrestleMania, because now I'm a badass. I need to be that chicken shit that finds a way to crawl out from under the ring, bloody, that's been choked something, my hand comes out, and you win. And that's exactly what we did. But this all worked because of Big Show. Big Show was so much fun to work with. We had a blast working together. I loved him. I would tell him sometimes, okay, go ahead and chop me in the chest hard. He would hit me so hard. I thought he broke my sternum a couple times. I'm like, oh my God. I'm not even going to ask you, can you hit me any harder? Because if you can, you're going to kill me. And if you can't, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of letting you know it. You almost stopped my heart.
Is he the worst chop you've ever taken?
Oh my God. Yeah. Not even close. Close. I took Haku's one time, and that was bad. I mean, it's like which is worse, getting hit by George Foreman or Mike Tyson? Both break your jaw. Big Show chopped me sometimes. I mean, it was because I would rib him, and like we were in Europe one time when we played the Shrek music, and so me and Kurt Angle are in the ring waiting on Big Show, and in the middle of Big Show coming out, you hear, "Hey, now you're an all-star," and Kurt goes, "What is that?" I said, "That's Shrek's theme music." And Big Show turned red. It was a red. He was so mad. And he starts running to the ring. And Kurt Angle goes, "Oh my God, he's going to kill us." Now here's the gold medalist saying, "Oh my God, he's going to kill us." And I said, "Don't worry. I'll take the blame for it. So when he slides under the bottom rope, I said, I swear Kurt did it. I had nothing to do with it. I jumped out of the ring. I jumped out of the ring. And Big Show realized he's not going to catch us. We're not only, I think we're faster than him. He's a pretty good athlete, but we were scared. And so he was not going to catch us. He finally gets me, and he's got me in the corner. I said, go ahead and chop me in the chest hard. That was, to this day, I could feel that chop. It was so freaking bad. I don't know how he didn't break something. I don't know how he didn't stop my heart. I mean, when he hit me in the chest, I thought he broke my ankles. My whole body just felt like it crushed down. I'm like, oh, don't do that again. Don't do not do that again. Do not do that again. I apologize for the Shrek music, which, by the way, I got blamed for that Shrek music 100%. Now, whether I knew about it or not, I'm in the ring. Obviously, I didn't play it. So there's at least a co-conspirator that's out there. And I got 100% blame, which at most I deserve 50% because somebody had to play it.
Has it never been outed who the other person is?
Yeah. I think people know that
now. Okay.
I think people do know. I made a mistake. I was at some Q&A thing with Glenn, with Kane. I didn't know it was being taped, and I freaking let the cat out of the bag, and somebody told about it. So, yeah, I'll give you a hint. He might be dead.
I understand.
And then the best part was the flight back. So we had spent this whole tour over there. We had we were in where were we? Northern Ireland, and some fan had like a Shrek card. My wife did. She was in early had a Shrek card. We gave it to a fan to ask Big Show. Big Show had been signing all these autographs. He was getting really tired of people hassling him. You know, a lot of us can just sneak in and out of places. Big Show can't. Everybody knows who he is. You know, plus he's just a giant. Some fan brought it up to him and goes, hey, would you sign this? And he goes, not right now. Just find me later. You can tell he's frustrated. She goes, I really want you to sign this. And Big Show says, please, just not right now. Finally, she goes, oh, come on. And she sticks it in his face and she grabs it. It's a Shrek card. And he looks around and sees me and that certain person and just like shakes his head at us. So when we're going back on the plane, we had a charter flight. And so he's telling Taker, he goes, hey, I know John's John. He's just having fun. He goes, but I'm a giant. I'm going to kill him. I'm just going to kill him. Now, Taker knows what's happening next. But Taker goes, yeah, I don't blame you. I just don't blame you. You might have to kill him. And so Big Show's now getting worked up. I'm like, dude, I'm in the back of the plane. You're throwing me under the bus. He's going to actually kill me in a minute when something happens. So the flight attendant says, sir, would you like this? And he goes, not right now. So he's talking to Taker. He goes, I'm fed up of him. I love him, but I think I'm going to kill him. And Taker's like, I don't blame you. I just don't blame you. I'm watching him go back and forth. And the flight attendant goes, sir, would you like this? And finally he goes, what? And he grabs it, and it's a Shrek fun book. Oh, and so I'm sitting back there. I thought, there's one owl on this plane. One owl. He's going to kill me. And he sits there, he looks at it, and he starts crumbling it up, those big giant hands. And finally he looks over at Taker, and he goes, no, that's pretty funny. So I was like, thank God he's laughing.
I gotta hear. I think you told me in your notes you have a story about being in Tokyo.
With Godzilla.
Yes,
the whole Godzilla thing. Yeah. It was Big Show. It was the whole thing with it was off the old school. Where you shoot yourself with the tranquilizer dart. This was Vince, and this is Vince's sense of humor, and I thought it was just brilliant. I'm going to shoot him with the tranquilizer dart, and I end up shooting myself in the neck. Just like Will Ferrell in the movie Old School. And so now I'm going to drag out Godzilla and beat Godzilla. JBL stands for just beat a lizard. I beat Godzilla in his hometown, and I'm talking about you're just like Big Show. You're a giant. You eat pizza, don't you? And so anyway, Big Show comes out. I'm like my Hello Kitty underwear, my boots. And that was the trick. We got a little heat on them or something. There wasn't any real heat. The problem was the Japanese crowd didn't speak English. So everything I'm saying, they're just seeing me out there with a Godzilla doll and take off my pants, and there I am in Hello Kitty underwear. They didn't understand a word of it. Big Show comes out, and they still don't understand what happened. They kind of cheered, but it was – I wish we could have done that in front of an American crowd or a European crowd, because that could have been really funny. But it wasn't in a Japanese crowd, but – Big Show was great.
Well, I know that you traveled everywhere with Big Show. I mean, we've heard your stories about being in Europe and certainly in Japan. But I think he even went on a trip to Iraq with you too, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah, and he was wonderful. I mean, the soldiers, everybody wanted to meet him. You know, I mean, like I say, he's a true giant, and he's got a giant heart, like he has, you know, a giant body. You know, he's just a Big Show's a wonderful guy, and he would greet soldier after soldier after soldier, you know, and all I wanted to see him, you know, because he's so freaking big, and we were staying in Saddam Hussein's palace. And Saddam Hussein had this bed that was like 13 feet wide or 12 feet wide or something. It was like something like a biblical proportions. And Big Show slept on that bed. So like this giant bed, he's like, no pictures. Like no pictures. Like I am not having any Jack and the Beanstalk references. I'm not going to hear anything about giant sleeping in a giant bed. No pictures. He was fed up. So we just left him alone.
Well, speaking of leaving alone, I know you didn't leave him alone about Hornswoggle. We've not spent any time talking about this, but you and I both count Dylan as a great close personal friend. And I think there's maybe a story or two about him and Big Show.
Yeah, there's several. So, you know, Hornswoggle, you know, when Big Show first got in, you know, I don't know what it was about Hornswoggle. It drove him nuts. You'd look around and see him, and he would just jump. So we just send him to him all the time, you know, just trying to, get Big Show. You know, you find anything, you know, on the road that's bothers somebody, that's what you do. So, but then they became really close friends, as almost everybody did with Big Show. And so Big Show's overseas in France with Hornswoggle, and that's when Finlay was charging Hornswoggle for the tennis balls. And if you don't know the story, it's when Hornswoggle would come out from under the ring, and Great Khali would stand there, and all of a sudden Hornswoggle realized he's caught. So then he'd start juggling pull out these tennis balls and start juggling them. And the big giant, you know, Big Khali would look at him like, ooh, you know, and sit there and look at him. Then finally Khali would get mad and throw the tennis balls in the crowd. And so Finlay went to Hornswoggle and said, hey, you owe us something like $1,200. And he goes, for what? He goes, well, those tennis balls were like, they were like French Open tennis balls. And because of that, they're like $400 each or whatever it was, $200, $400. It was like a fortune. And he goes, so you owe us $1,200 for the tennis balls going in the crowd. He goes, we'll take it out of your pay at the end of the week. So we're over there for quite a while. So every night, Khali's trying to throw these tennis balls in the crowd, and Hornswoggle's trying to stop them. And the balls that go in the crowd, he's trying to go get back because he thinks he's being charged for them for these French Open tennis balls. So Finlay is like keeping a tab. He's at ringside keeping a tab of the tennis balls that he's lost. So like Hornswoggle's like, you got to be kidding me. I'm going to come over here and lose money because of these freaking tennis balls. So Hornswoggle was trying to go find tennis balls. Then Finlay goes, no, we've already bought all of them for the week. So now Hornswoggle's thinking, I got to keep so many balls from going in the crowd because I'm losing money every time they do. So finally, Hornswoggle is so up in arms about this. He tells Big Show this. And he goes, man, I'm not going to make any money this tour because these tennis balls, they're like French Open they're like French Open classics or something. And he goes, they're hundreds of bucks each. And so Big Show like, now Big Show is a guy who hates. Big Show takes care of his friends, so he goes in there to Finlay and he's mad. And said Finlay goes, "Hold on, wait a minute." He goes, "Let me tell you what's happening." So he told him the whole story. So Finlay comes out of the production room. He goes back to Hornswoggle, and Hornswoggle goes, "Well," Big Show goes, "You're screwed." Just walked out.
What a great story. I gotta wonder, do you think there's any fun pictures out there of those two standing side by side? I mean, Big Show and Hornswoggle as a photo op, that's the one to have, right?
Oh, absolutely it is. I got a picture of them somewhere, and I tried to look for it. I hope to find it. If I do, I'll give it to Dave Silva to post of him, Big Show and Hornswoggle snuggling in Gorilla. Snuggling. I don't know how it happened. I think Big Show was down on the ground and stretching or something. And Hornswoggle like got down like he was like going to hug him or something, and Big Show pulled him around. And now they're sitting there snuggling and cuddled up on the floor. And I think Tommy Dreamer took the picture. I think I've got it somewhere, but it's like this picture of Big Show snuggling with Hornswoggle. It's very cute.
Well, speaking of cute, if you're looking to get cuter this summer, I want you to make this your best season yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. Eating well has never been this easy. Just heat up and enjoy, giving you more time to do what you want. Get outside instead of prepping and cooking indoors. Factor meals arrive fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any lifestyle. With 45 different weekly menu options, you can pick different gourmet meals that fit your goals. You can choose from Calorie Smart or Protein Plus or Keto or even more. The Factor is going to power you all day long. We're talking about breakfasts, on the go lunches, premium dinners, even guilt free snacks and desserts. It's easy to savor more this spring. Factor meals pack in the flavor with none of the fuss. I've been a longtime user of Factor. My wife and I both own and operate a couple of different businesses each. So we're on the go nonstop. And that means sometimes we don't have time to prepare breakfast or prepare lunch, or we don't have as much time to even eat dinner together at the same time. Well, Factor makes eating well together easier. Go right now and get started at factormeals.com/wrestle50off and use the code wrestle50off. You'll get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code wrestle50off at factormeals.com/wrestle50off for 50% off plus free shipping. Hey, so John, we're talking about Big Show, and of course I know that, you know, he goes on right after your feud with him ends, and you're on a collision course for WrestleMania. Later in the year is when we're going to make the decision, hey, this ECW thing's catching fire. And in 06, we see them launch their own WWE CW. And I think most people who were watching back then have a lot of high praise for Big Show and his work in ECW. He's beat up. He's on borrowed time. He's going to have to take some time off. But he really, I feel like between 05 and 07, did a phenomenal job of changing the narrative on him.
Yeah.
Because early in his WWE career, you saw a lot of criticism in the newsletters, and there was a lot of reports that the office was actually critical of him, and maybe they had a love-hate relationship with him. It leads to him actually taking a bit of a hiatus from wrestling in 2007. We know there were some plans for him to do a Big Show, pardon the pun, at the Pyramid in Memphis with Hulk Hogan. Maybe he was even flirting with the idea of doing boxing. But at least from a fan perspective, what did you think of the decision for Big Show to take a year off, and especially after he had such a great run? And I know that he needed some time off to heal up from injuries, but taking a hiatus when you're $1 million earner, that's not common.
No, it's not common, but I think he was pretty beat up. You know, I mean, he is a true giant, and he's got some issues because of that. I think he had a knee replacement recently. You know, he's a true giant. You know, and because of that, he has certain issues structurally with his body. You know, he was in a lot of pain at times, and you know, Big Show. You know, he didn't. Some people are going to say when I say he didn't bitch, Big Show liked bitching, but it's more of an art to him than it was really Big Show bitching. You know, Big Show showed up and worked. He worked hurt. He didn't, you know, he worked when he had to. And also Big Show had to learn on global television, which is something you don't want to do. You know, so his first few matches, he had never had a match before. And all of a sudden he's in a storyline with Hogan. I mean, that's insane. And then all of a sudden now he's out there working with Stone Cold. You know, he figured out how to work. You know, he didn't have the independence to learn how to work. He didn't have territories to learn how to work. He had to learn on television, and he figured it out, and he became a terrific worker. I mean, he's the, you know, I never got to work with Andre. He's the best giant best big man I've ever seen. I don't think there'll ever be anything like him again. An athlete like him, you know, he could throw a drop kick, he'd do all this stuff, and, you know, they'd have talked him out of doing stuff because he was a giant. But he had the ability to do all of that. So I think taking that year off, you know, I think he was just either burnt out or he was hurt. And I certainly understood. I thought he did a great job as champion. I always thought that WWE kind of messed up with him. And I think Triple H has alluded to this some, and I don't want to put words in Hunter's mouth, but, you know, they should have treated him more like a special attraction.
Yeah.
But because he was so entertaining, he could do anything.
Yeah.
So you could put him in a comedy skit. You could put him out there as Baby New Year, which they did. You know, Vince, you know, thought that was hilarious, but Big Show did a good job with it. You could put him out there as anything you wanted to do because he was so entertaining. It almost worked against him. I think it'd been better if you'd have kept him more as a special attraction.
That's what I was getting to. I feel like even a guy like Dolph Ziggler, I take a look at his WWE run, and no doubt the dude made a lot of money for a lot of years. I mean, what an incredible run start to finish he had. You and I've talked about it before on the show and off the show. The pop when he won the title the night after WrestleMania, one of the all-time loudest reactions in the history of wrestling. But it does feel like, I've wondered sometimes, was he almost, it was a double-edged sword. He was so good that he could make other people look good. So instead of rather it being about showcasing him, he was often used in a role to help showcase others because they knew, hey, if we put him in there with Dolph, the guy's going to look like $1 million. So as a result, everyone around you looks like $1 million, but maybe not you. Is that a gift and a curse for guys like Big Show?
100%.
For different reasons, but same thing, right?
Yeah, 100%. I used to watch Dolph, and they put him out there with guys that just weren't good workers because they knew Dolph could get him through. I called nearly all those matches. And I'd be in the production meetings, the creative type meeting where creative was discussed. It wasn't, creative was probably not decided there. Vince would decide some stuff, but most of it was, somewhere else. But I'd be in there in the production meetings, and I'd hear it. Well, Dolph can do it. And they knew Dolph was so good it wouldn't kill his heat because he was so freaking good. They should have took better care of Dolph. But because he was so good, he was so valuable in so many different ways that you could stick Dolph out there in any situation and Dolph would be fine. Big Show was the same way. Big Show was too entertaining. He was too funny. And also he could do the straight guy stuff. He could be the giant. Big Show could be so many different things that you just want to get him on TV all the time, which I thought was not what you need to do. Same with Dolph. We were in Japan one time and Billy Gunn had a match with Heidenreich. And Heidenreich was not a great worker. Billy got this great match out of him. Great match out of him. And when I came back, I said, boy, Billy, did you ever screw up, son? I said, did you ever screw up? He said, what do you mean? I said, they're going to stick you with everybody that can't work now. And sure enough, after that, they found out what a great match they had. And Billy got stuck with everybody that couldn't work because Billy could get them over. Or at least Billy could make them look like they belonged and make them look the best they could look. And because Billy was in that role, it hurt him some because he was that freaking good. Dolph was the same way. Big Show was the same way. Big Show was he was too good. And look, I know he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's made a lot of money. I just wish they could have kept him more as a special attraction because he really was a true giant.
What's great to think about too with Big Show, because we've heard this a lot when people talk about the early years of Andre, about how much more athletic Andre was as a young man than he was when most of us saw him in prime time at the end of his career. But we've all heard, and maybe some of us have seen, Big Show could do a kip up and Big Show could do a top rope drop kick. And I've heard people say that he could do a shooting star press or a moonsault. I don't know how much of that I believe, but we've always heard the phrase in wrestling, hey, you got to work like a giant. And I know that you got to work like a big man. So it always had to be interesting when you weren't the bigger man in the match. Now he is. So I'm sure that was interesting for you, but do you think if Paul Wight came along today, some of the old pundits who've always said, oh, you got to work like a giant, would they have encouraged that today, or would they ask or look forward to him showing some more of his athleticism, like a top rope drop kick and that sort of thing?
No, I think today, and I don't want to bash these guys today, the pundits out there today, I'm glad they're pundits for wrestling. It's wonderful we got them. But they would say, oh, man, it's so great. If he does the moonsault again, he should do the moonsault. Then they want him to do it every night, and it kills them. If you let these guys book the territory, they kill the governor in the first episode of The Walking Dead, by the way. It doesn't last 2 seasons. And so there's a reason that you don't give in to – the reason that you lead the fans, not they lead you. Now, that doesn't mean you don't give them what you want, but I think you understand what I'm saying. And I think that there's no doubt that they would want Big Show to do everything he could do, but he doesn't need to, and he didn't back then. He was pretty selective about what he did. It's not like I'm bashing him. He could do it, and he didn't do it very regularly because he did work like a giant. And Andre, by the way, 1981 in the tennis facility, I think it was the tennis courts, with Stan Hansen. You guys have got to look that match up. It's unbelievable to watch Andre work. Stan said that was the match that got him over in Japan. And it's an unbelievable match. But you realize how different Andre was from 1981 to the match with Hogan. I guess it was 86 at WrestleMania 3. It was a complete different Andre. Andre, his health just fell off a cliff, and it fell off really fast when it started falling.
87, but who cares? I do want to ask you about the Andre debate. Obviously he is a legend in WWE lore, deservedly so. We've often said that timing is everything. Let's say that Paul Wight found himself in a time machine and he was in that same spot that Andre was. Does wrestling look differently, do you think? Like, I know that people say what a great, talent Andre was and all that sort of thing. But I'm wondering if the roles are reversed and Andre starting when Paul Wight is starting and Big Show is starting when Andre is starting, aren't we talking about Big Show like he's the freaking Babe Ruth of wrestling?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. It's where Andre was in history. It's 100%. Same with Hogan. Same with San Martino. Same with Londos before that. Same with guys like Gus Sonnenberg. Same, yes, 100%. It's where Andre was in history, and I think that's the difference, and also the difference in how they worked. Big Show was at one place. He was at WCW. He was in a territory. Andre was everywhere, so Andre didn't have to work every week somewhere. That's a massive difference, and that's like the original Sheik. That's like Bruiser Brody. Like complete different dynamic. Then, okay, you got to be here. And like Jerry Lawler selling out Memphis 52 straight weeks, nobody will ever do that again.
Yeah.
That's hard to do. To come in at times is also hard to do to draw money. It's hard to draw money, by the way. But coming in at times, it's a much easier role than being in a territory and having to work every single week. So Andre going around, he could be the giant. He could be the giant here, then he goes over here. He works here for a few weeks, makes a ton of money, goes somewhere else. Big Show was in a territory. It's a complete different dynamic. So it's almost impossible to compare the two. But now then you had history that was being made with Hogan, just happened to be at the right time with the right guy, and all of a sudden you have 93,000 people in an arena. So history was the difference, I believe, between the two giants.
I do want to ask, when we're thinking about his place in history, I can't help but think about the big moments. Like, we know that they're memorializing that match from WrestleMania 13 with Austin and Bret Hart this year at the WWE Hall of Fame. But one of those moments one day has to be when Big Show collapsed the ring on SmackDown. Like the first ring collapse. That's got to be up there in great moments in WWE history, doesn't it?
It has to be. That was so freaking well done. I mean, we did so much stuff with Big Show because he could do anything. And you put him out there with Brock or with Mark Henry, and two great athletes. And, you had magic, like these rings collapsing. I mean, yes, that's one of those moments that everybody remembers.
Another memory that I'll never forget about Big Show is, well, I hate to say it, the funeral scene with the Big Boss Man, and the idea that the Boss Man is going to be riding through the graveyard on the hood of the car. You're there when this goes down. Is this one of the craziest doggone things you ever saw happen in WWE? What can you tell us about this?
This was one of the greatest things ever. 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 I mean, if you're Big Show, you're screwed, because how do you react to this? Your dad's being dragged off, his casket's being dragged off by this guy in an old Barney Fife police car. They had this old police car for him to do it in, not like a modern one. It was like a Barney Fife police car, or like one from the Dukes of Hazzard or something. So I thought it was one of the greatest things we ever did. I just thought it was fantastic. Big Show jumping on the casket, crying. No, look, I'm not making fun of Big Show. He did everything he could. He did everything right. You understood that Big Show is about the only guy that can make this work. And he did make it work. But what a freaking idea. Pull a guy's casket out of his funeral and tow it off, and the son go chasing after it and jump on it and ride the casket.
I do want to ask you about another moment that I think a lot of mainstream people will remember. When Big Show and Floyd Mayweather were in the ring together, of course, they're getting ready for WrestleMania 24, where Ric Flair famously retired in Florida. But there was a spectacle because Money Mayweather had just become the pay-per-view juggernaut of the boxing landscape. So because he's a wrestling fan, hey, we'll have him mix it up with someone here in WWE. And they choose Big Show, a very unconventional choice. And Bruce has told the story before that I believe he got his nose burst in this.
He sure did. Hey, I was there because we all want, Floyd was a terrific celebrity, and he was very nice to all the guys. We're all sitting around, watching them go over their stuff, just kind of like Marks would do, and because we are. And Big Show tells him, "Go ahead and lay it in." Big Show told him to. Big Show's not, he's a giant. He's tough. He's gonna take it for the business. So Floyd goes, "No, I won't even touch you." He's not wanting to touch you. So Big Show is sitting on his knees, and then Floyd Mayweather, he takes a punch from a guy who had knocked out 30 or 35, whatever it is, professional fighters. He took it right on the snout. I mean, bro, he busted his nose, broke his nose. I think it broke his nose, but busted his nose for sure. That Big Show starts going after him. If he'd have caught him, he'd have killed him. He would have killed him and probably would have eaten him. It was, and we're sitting in the back, and we're dying. Not because we were glad Big Show got here, but if it was anybody, it's just we know he's okay. We just know what a screw up. And then we're watching Big Show chase him, which he had no chance of catching him. Thank God for Floyd, because Big Show would have killed him. He was furious when he freaking broke his nose, because he gives him the nose, and Floyd says, "I won't even touch you." And pow! And he didn't mean to. It wasn't like he took a shot at him. He just, I think, got carried away and all of a sudden went to his boxer instincts and punched him. Floyd didn't mean to. Apologize to him later, but shit happens. But oh man, Big Show was mad. Big Show had Akabono too, by the way. I mean, my God, it was that poor man got stuck with everything.
I forgot about that. Yeah, we just recently covered that. A sumo match at WrestleMania with Akibono. My God, I mean,
yeah, my wife came to see me because I was on WrestleMania somewhere, and they had a practice ring set up or something. Go back there. And my wife tells me, she says, "I am scarred for life." I said, "What happened?" She said, "I just saw that Japanese sumo naked." And I said, "What?" Because, they get treated, like gods by the young boys. Yes. So he just comes out of the ring, just takes off his clothes, and he's sitting there waiting, for him to dress them or whatever they're doing. And, the area was kind of cordoned off, but my wife was coming to get me, and she walked right into Akabono naked. And she's like, "I've been scarred for life." But Big Show, Big Show, I'd be interested to see those guys in a shoot. I know Big Show's stronger than him. No doubt about it. Now Akibono's got the technique and all that stuff. I understand that, but I know Big Show's stronger than him.
Unfortunately, his monster truck was not stronger than Hulk Hogan's. Halloween Havoc 1995, you mentioned it earlier. I think one of his first official actual matches that he had is against Hulk Hogan for the world title. But at this particular WCW pay-per-view, and again, you're not there at the time, but you're a wrestling nerd like all of us. You're keeping up with this.
Yeah.
Off goes the Giant off the top of the building there in Detroit, and they pretend like he fell in the lake, and when he came back to life, and he tag teamed Hulk Hogan with the Yeti later that evening. This has to be something that old JBL would have busted his balls about.
Oh my God. This is so bad. It's so bad. You pushed him off a building. You've killed him. And then he comes back in the same car. You don't like have the mystique of, okay, is the Giant ever coming back? You just bring him back and kill the gimmick.
Yes.
It's crazy. See, you know what Hogan's doing. They've done this since the beginning of time. You bring in some big star and some big giant for Hogan to, eventually go over and drop the leg on and all that. I get what they're doing, but this was insane. I can't believe this passed Hogan. I guess Bischoff was there at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I can't believe it passed Eric. I mean, this is, I don't know if I'd love to talk to Eric about this and ask him, what were you thinking? Because there had to be some rationale behind it that it didn't, they had no idea it's going to look so stupid. There's no way they did, or they wouldn't have done it. But I'd love to hear the rationale behind it. We're going to push the Giant off a building, and then he's just going to come back like nothing happened.
Yeah, it's hard to think that that's a winning strategy to draw money. But speaking of money, I think you won some money on a giant bet with Big Show once. Maybe there was, for the Super Bowl, we might do squares. For the tournament like tonight, we might fill out a bracket. But I think once upon a time, there was some betting going on with Big Show too, right?
Oh my God, this is one of the greatest stories ever. So we are in, I don't know where we are. I know where we had the payoff, but anyway, Vince wants to weigh all the guys. And I think this was just a rib on Big Show. I really do. I think Percy was there at the time who didn't want to weigh, because he was, sensitive about his weight. So everybody had to weigh. So we put up a ledger guess Big Show's weight. I think it was $10 or something like that. Anyway, it was like $600 something ended up in the pot, or 800, something like that. It was under 1,000, but it was a lot of money. So every weight between 450 and like 525 almost was taken. I happened to put down 483. And now later, Big Show got the sheet to see what everybody guessed because he didn't find it that funny. There were going to be some receipts coming. So Jeff Hardy guessed like 1,275 pounds. It was one of the greatest things ever. Jeff put his $10 in and guessed like 1,275 pounds or something. And Big Show was like, that motherfucker, he guessed 1,200 pounds. It was great. Jeff just having fun being Jeff. But of all people, I win this thing. So I win like $600 or $600, $800, something like that off Big Show. So I tell the guys, hey, next week we're in St. Louis. We're going to have a Big Show party. So we went to In Cahoots, which was a cowboy bar out by the airport where we stayed. And I walked in, I put all the earnings down on the bar, and I said, hey, we're going to drink till the earnings are gone and the guys can pay for it themselves. So we had this huge freaking party. The police came to me about 3/4 of the way through the party, said, would you come get your referee off my cop car? And so I go out there, and Tim White is passed out on the hood of a police car, like in a crucifix. He's passed out like that. So I said, thank you so much for not arresting him. He goes, oh, no. She goes, those things happen. Don't worry about it. Just get him off my car. So I got Tim and got it out. Big Show came by. We had a good time with it. It was a lot of fun. Big Show's a really good sport. But, yeah, we did have the entire company betting on Big Show's weight, and of all people, I won it. And I took the earnings down to the bar and put them in and said, we're drinking till the money runs out.
Of course, we're telling fun stories here at the end of the show, but these days we know that he's recently made some cameos as Captain Insano, and he's still doing his thing with AEW. I mean, this guy's a bona fide WWE Hall of Famer, no doubt. But what do you think Big Show's legacy in wrestling will be? I mean, we've mentioned before that timing is everything, and if he would have come along when Andre did, he'd be the Babe Ruth of wrestling.
Yeah.
But given, his incredible career from WCW to now in AEW and most of that tenure being with WWE, what do you think his career will wind up being? Like, what will his legacy be when people speak about him after the fact, John?
I think, I looked up, getting ready for this show, the greatest giants ever. And Edward de Beaupre was like 8 feet, 2.5 inches. He fought Louis Cyr in 1901. Louis Cyr, was one of those guys vying with Mark Henry to be the strongest man of all time. And Beaupre was actually like, he'd been in iron bars. He's like this huge 8-foot tall giant. Apparently the match was horrible, absolutely horrible. So he's not in it. Silo Sam, who was almost 7'10" or something. Vince tried to sign him in the 1980s, and he's like a hillbilly giant gimmick. And Vince just kept him under contract, I think, just so that he wouldn't be a giant out there that would compete with Andre. But apparently Silo Sam was horrible. So we've had some that have not been that good. Oh, and by the way, Big Show and Khali got into I wouldn't say it was a fight. It was like a shoot wrestling match overseas one time.
What happened?
Oh, yeah. They'd worked these two guys up, and I didn't see it, unfortunately. And both of them ended up on the ground. And, apparently it was they kind of worked up to a shoot. And one, I don't know, Khali tried to take Big Show down or something, or Big Show took him down. I can't remember, but it was a shoot, but it wasn't a fight. It was not a fight. But, yeah, it was our two big giants went at each other. So, which, I love Khali, but I think I got to put my money on Paul Wight on that one. But just because of mobility and plus, I saw that video of him knocking out that fan. I thought, oh my God. But as far as legacy, I think there's two real giants in the history of the business, Andre and Big Show.
Yeah.
And I think Big Show was, Andre when he was younger, look at that 1981 match with Stan, was a terrific athlete when he was younger. We saw an Andre when he got older and could barely walk. That's what most people remember. We got Big Show during his prime, and he could do anything. And not only that, he could do anything backstage. He was very articulate. He's a very smart guy. I think his legacy goes down as one of the greatest men of all time and one of the two best giants of all time. And you can make your choice between him and Andre, and whatever you want to choose. Big Show held a lot more titles, but he was in a different system. Big Show was in a one place. That's much harder than traveling around. and just making a cameo appearances. Much harder. So, Big Show had a harder road. Andre had, the 93,000 people in the arena when he finally culminated his career against Hulk. So, there's arguments for both. And, Big Show's my friend, so I'll go with him. But I think his legacy goes down as one of the two great giants of all time.
And you're right. We got to see the killer instinct of the giant, through the ECW stuff, but we also saw the fun stuff. You talked about doing the tranquilizer dart, but they had the whole burrito angle. I'm seeing people in the comments mentioning this, where he's in the bathroom with Eddie Guerrero. And I mean, he was a great comedic character in the same vein as Kurt Angle, where he's got this believability and credibility where, hey, this dude's a badass and he can pretty much do what he wants, but he can also sort of be self-deprecating and poke fun. And he's okay with being the fool. Like, he gets that it's entertainment in a way that some guys might take personally. It never came off the air like that Big Show was. He got it and understood what the assignment was, right?
Yeah, 100%. And when you look at Big Show, what people were asking of him was a pretty remarkable thing. Okay, you can do all this other stuff. Don't do it. So basically you're saying don't do 75% of what you can do. Don't be entertaining. Don't cut to entertaining promos. Don't do all your athleticism. Be a giant. Don't do any of this funny stuff that you can do so well. Just be a giant, which he was at times. And that's what we needed at times. But when you're in a territory and you're there consistently week after week, you got to have range. And that's what Big Show had. I mean, you look at it with Stone Cold. He did hokey stuff with Kurt Angle. And it was very good at it. At times he wouldn't do anything like that. Big Show was much the same. And, guys can look back and say, oh, he should have been a giant more. He was a giant 24/7. Okay. It's not like you could ever take that away from him. He was just incredibly talented. And because he was, they used him in a whole variety of ways.
Well, we're going to be getting you ready next week here on the program for WrestleMania. I can't believe it, but next weekend is WrestleMania. We're going to be breaking down some of the card, having some fun. And John, I think you're actually going to be making some appearances WrestleMania weekend, aren't you?
Yeah, not for WWE. I want to make that clear. They have not called me, and I'm not looking. I'm not fishing here trying to get anything done. I'm going out there for WrestleCon with Ron. We're going to sign some autographs out there at WrestleMania. So Ron and I will be out there, but not doing much else other than making some appearances.
Check out JBL and Ron Simmons, the APA at WrestleCon next weekend. And next week, we're going to be talking all things WrestleMania right here on Something to Wrestle with John Layfield.